find his footing in the NHL as an 18-year-old. Now, the pandemic was a little tricky, because there was not really anywhere for him to go other than the pro leagues. But like, was he necessarily ready to set the NHL on fire? He was really relegated to a bottom six role for most of the season, and who knows? Maybe it would have been best for his development to play maybe even in the AHL, where he definitely could have been sent to, or potentially they did play in the Q where he could have went actually. So, although we've had a lot of NHL ready talent and that have played in the NHL, it's not necessarily means that it was a great thing that they played and that it potentially could have hurt their development and that they just got rushed there because they were a top pick.
Yeah,
they're going to make me sweat. It's commercials. They're going to make me sweat just a little bit more, aren't they? Of course they are.
Two picks in. They're already hitting the commercials. Of course that happens.
We're into rant mode. I promise. For now,
we're on average less than 2 picks per half hour.
4
picks an hour.
We're a half hour into coverage. We have 2 picks. That's disgusting.
I'm sure you both would appreciate this. I have an aesthetic here, and the aesthetic is I love the Mighty Ducks logo, as you can plainly see. It's the best logo of all of them. Not that I don't like the current one.
Yeah, they got to bring back the Ducks logo permanently, and they've got to bring in the purple and green jersey. It's by far the best. They went away from it right before they won the cup, which is like the worst possible timing. Then they had to stick with that stupid D foot. Come on.
Interestingly enough, Bob McKenzie, the great Bobby Mack, tweeting he expects Mason McTavish to potentially be the pick here.
Yeah, my phone is going nuts right now as to who they're going to get. This is kind of crazy.
Are you hearing any on McTavish? Like, has that been? He's a guy who's really rocketed up the boards here as of late. Like, he kind of started off as a mid to late round first rounder, and then kind of, crept up into the 10-ish realm, like 10 to early teen realm. And then he somehow, at like the last week or so, ended up in the top 10, and now apparently into the top 5 potentially on a lot of these draft rankings. And could go at the end of the day number 3 here to Anaheim. We'll see. The pick is in, so I guess once we get back here from commercial, which it looks like we have now, we'll figure it out. But man, that would be an interesting one. Like I said, this number 3 is kind of where it starts, right? That's where the draft starts, I believe. I thought so. So if it ends up being McTavish, that means that Eklund slides. That means that Edvinsson slides. These players that we were expecting to go in the top 5, now one of them is probably going to end up outside, and someone's going to get a really good pick.
Oh, boy.
Let's see.
Is it going
How
now?
do I feel about this pick?
About to.
Look at all those non-people at the Honda Center.
The empty chairs. Did you guys watch any of the Olympic opening ceremonies? I saw just a couple highlights from it, and the athletes coming out and waving to empty seats. So awkward.
Yeah. I
of the last year,
yeah.
So ready for this to be over. All right,
so I know you talked about.
Oh, so they did go Mason McTavish.
Oh, there we go.
McTavish is the pick, the centerman. Yeah, I think this is a pretty decent pick here for them. I guess I'll let you go on this one since you are the Ducks guy. What you think of this pickup?
This prize pick. This might be a case. I know you guys have talked about this in the past. Do you go or do you draft GM Bob Murray to go for need because what the Anaheim Ducks did this past season, place they were in terms of goals, last. Guess what place they were in terms of power play percentage? Dead last. Pretty much every offensive category they could think of, they were dead last. So this is someone that's going to provide a ton of firepower for the Anaheim Ducks. And looking at this chart here, his the fancy stats, his expected goals are through the roof. His expected assists per 60 are also through the roof. The only thing, this is another playmaking type prospect for the Anaheim Ducks. they have plenty of these kind of players, but he's also a very, very gifted player. Definitely a very good two-way center in the draft. Very good as far as his shot selection, as far as picking the corners. That's where he really thrives. And I'm watching the video right now, just a highlight video of Mason, who, by the way, great name, rhymes with Jason. I like it a lot, just as far as that's concerned. Did very well in Team Canada. But looking at some of the underlying stats, this is not a bad pick for the Ducks. This is more of a complimentary pick for who else they have on their roster. Like I said, pair him up with Zegras. Pair him up with, well, maybe not Zegras because McTavish is a center, but put him on a line with perhaps Rickard Rakell. He could be a center of the future. One other thing I will point out before I head off. There's another center that's retiring soon, maybe in the next year or two, Ryan Getzlaf. We still don't know whether Getzlaf is going to stick around in Anaheim. He's going to take a pay cut for sure. So they need to build up that center depth with Getzlaf pretty much riding off into the sunset. So overall, not a bad pick, but one that is a bit of a surprise. I would say the first big surprise of this year's NHL draft. So there you go.
Yeah, thanks to the Ducks for bringing on the chaos. That's what we all want, right? That's
chaos!
Entertainment. And, Mason McTavish, he had a short stint on loan in the Swiss League this year, 9 goals in 13 games. So you want to talk about scoring touch. That looks pretty good. It's a short sample, but not bad.
I've taken up a lot of you guys' time.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Going to this team, wearing this jersey right here, the orange one. So, folks, I'll have a bonus show over the weekends talking about the draft, and we'll be good to go. And also bonus interviewing Andy Sutton, former Anaheim Duck, on Monday's podcast. So that'll be a fun one. Yeah, he also reveals who was the biggest pranksters on the Anaheim Ducks back in the day.
I mean, it's got to be Andy Sutton.
I love those stories, man. I love them.
I love them too.
I'll be sure to check that out. Everyone else, check it out too. Locked On Ducks.
Yep. Thanks so much, Jason.
Ducks. Oh yeah, sorry. One more time. LO_Ducks is the Twitter. All right.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, go and follow that. And thanks so much, Jason. We're going to throw right to bringing on Jack Bushman from Locked On Blackhawks, because the Blackhawks have been making some moves. How's it going, Jack?
It's going good. It's been a pretty chaotic last couple hours here, kind of seeing what the whole trade was going to pan out to be. There were a couple different reports on what the contract exactly was. So just trying to figure out exactly what the deal was and exactly what the Blackhawks gave up, and trying to piece together, whether or not this was the smart decision by the Blackhawks or, maybe they gave up a little too much. But at the end of the day, I think they got their guy, but there's plenty to be discussed here, boys.
So what was your final conclusion of the deal? You happy with it? What are your thoughts?
Overall, I thought the trade was pretty fair. Most people are upset about the additional first-round pick being thrown in there in next year's draft as well. I kind of look at it more so that we had the opportunity to keep Lucas Reichel. I thought he was going to be a part of this trade if Kirby Dach and Alex DeBrincat weren't going to be. So the Blackhawks managed to keep him as well, but it cost them an additional first-round pick. So to me, I thought that was a pretty fair swap for Seth. The interesting part for sure is the $9.5 million AAV over the next 8 years. He's the third highest paid defenseman in the NHL, getting more money than a guy like Alex Pietrangelo, who has shown time in and time out that he's got what it takes to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs, led the Blues to a Stanley Cup. And now Seth Jones is making almost $1 million more than he is. It's a little hard to put into perspective in that aspect. So the trade I thought was fine, but if Seth Jones, if he doesn't play very well out of the gate and he doesn't show up and be that number one defenseman to lead this team through the rebuild, it could look like a financial nightmare for Chicago. But time will tell, like most trades.
We'll get back to this in just a moment. The Devils are making their pick, and so they've screwed up royally. So it looks like they've selected Luke Hughes, the brother of Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes. So Luke Hughes joining New Jersey, joining his brother Jack So a pretty good player that they picked up, nice defenseman out of the U.S. national program who they've done an amazing job just pumping out prospects. We'll get to that in a moment. But they were showing on the television here that they legitimately had like the name Jack Hughes. There was people with signs that said Hughes on it, and they didn't even announce the pick yet. So everyone knew that it was Jack Hughes. So that was a little bit of a miscue. They're probably supposed to put Hughes up after they announced the pick. But anyways, it is Luke Hughes joining his brother Jack in New Jersey.
Interesting. Luke Hughes is supposed to be decent, but not this good.
I think I saw NHL.com had him as their second highest ranked player. If I'm reading
really?
Had them as their second highest ranked player. I'll read out what they have as for a scouting report for him. Luke Hughes is a great skater, capable of playing a smart defensive game with good poise and reads. He scored 34 points and had 68 shots on goal and was a plus 11 in 38 games for the USA National Team Development Program under 18 team. The 17-year-old sustained a lacerated tendon in his foot from a skate cut back in March, but is hoping to resume skating in late May. And he is committed to playing at Michigan next year. So Michigan, if Owen Power goes back to Michigan, Matty Beniers goes back to Michigan, they're going to get this kid, Kent Johnson, probably going back to Michigan. That's going to be a powerhouse.
Definitely.
Looks like Jack Hughes is losing it right now that his brother has been drafted onto the Devils. Yeah. So I guess they made their future star player pretty happy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a good pick for them, too. I think this was the one that our boy Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils wanted to see happen, reunite the Hughes brothers. So who knows? Maybe one day Quinn will end up in New Jersey, or those two will end up in Vancouver, or maybe they'll all end up elsewhere. But that'll be kind of fun if they can get all three brothers onto one team at some point. I've always wanted the Stahl brothers to end up on a team. And this year it could actually happen because like Mark and Eric are both UFAs, and they could go join Jared, or they could go join Jordan in Carolina. But let's get back to the trade today between the Chicago Blackhawks, since we got you here, Jack. Did you feel like this team is ready to compete, and that like this looked to me as like a, hey, we're ready to go, this is a win now type of move? Is this team ready for that, or did they maybe jump the gun a little bit?
Also, before going into that, it is a little bit relevant because now the Blackhawks have the Jones brothers, by the way.
Yes, they do.
They do. Wanted to throw that in there for sure.
Well, brotherly love in the NHL today.
Absolutely. It's coming around. But that's it's going to be tough for them. They're still very young, even though their biggest need going into this offseason was to go and get a number one defenseman. Now they have done that. Hopefully, keep my fingers crossed. Hopefully Seth plays a little bit better than he did in Columbus this past year. But for the Blackhawks, looking next season, it might be a little bit of a stretch, but now that we've addressed one of our biggest needs, I definitely think that's a step in the right direction. I know people aren't going to be happy with the financial look of this deal, $9.5 million AAV. I mean, it speaks for itself. Blackhawks Twitter is in a frenzy right now. But at the end of the day, that was our biggest need going into this offseason, and we've checked that box off the list now. So now it's really all about getting some young complementary pieces on that back end, along with Seth. Even though we got rid of Adam Boquist, we still have a lot of guys back there. Nicholas Baban was a former first-round pick. Ian Mitchell was a highly touted prospect. That was a second-round pick for the Blackhawks. Wyatt Kalynuk looked good in a short stint last year. And we got some young forwards that got to get their feet wet a little bit in the NHL last year as well. So I don't know if next year is – I know Blackhawks fans are hoping that this team's going to be taking that next step next year. I don't know if playoffs is realistic, but I do think with a year of experience under the youngsters' belts, now that they've got to play in the NHL last year, it was a little bit of a bumpy road for some of them, but that progression and that step is important for those young guys. So while it may not be contending for the Blackhawks next year, I do think they're going to be better overall. It's just it's not going to be an easy division, and they're going to have to earn their wins, and I don't know if this young team's ready to piece it all together yet.
Tays coming back should definitely be a help as well, too, right? So
fingers crossed for sure. But yeah, you gotta think he slots in at that first line center. And what really hurt the Blackhawks last year was we didn't have any depth down the middle. It was really just rookies. We had Pia Suter, who came over from over in Europe and was basically our first line center right away. Philip Kurashev, another young guy who played a lot of center. And now we get Tays back. We get a healthy Kirby Dach, former first-round pick last year that I mentioned earlier. Lucas Reichel could come in and play some center for the Blackhawks potentially next year. Henrik Borgstrom, who we just acquired in a trade from the Panthers at the deadline, he plays center as well. So there are a lot of pieces to this team. It's just kind of figuring out how they can, how soon they can put it together here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Blackhawks form things together over the next couple of seasons, because I think there's going to be a lot of chaos going around that team with the pending litigation, considering the whole Brad Aldrich thing, with we kind of have to bring up anytime we talk about the Blackhawks at this point, and a lot of media is not willing to talk about it, but it's a huge story, and I'm interested to see like who in that team stays around, because I think there's going to be a lot of shakeups in that management group.
I definitely agree. It's pretty even tough to see at this point. Stan Bowman had his first press conference in 2 months, but it's pretty tough to see that he's even able to do those, knowing all the details that we do now. But yeah, that's going to be interesting for sure. And one thing I also have considered too is that, assuming that hopefully the organization comes to their senses and these people get let go of their jobs, I'm hoping that happens. And assuming it does, once that does, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Jeremy Colleton. I don't think he's on the hot seat by any means. I do think the organization trusts him, but if all those guys in the front office are let go, the reason he got this job was because those guys, he was in those guys' in their clubhouse, I guess you could say, or they had a lot of belief in Jeremy Colleton to be the next guy to come in after Joel Quenneville. And if those guys are gone, I'm curious to see if a new organization will want to start completely clean and even get rid of some of the coaching staff as well.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Jack, for joining us here, and we really appreciate your insight on all things Blackhawks. We're going to let you go here, and let's pimp Locked On Blackhawks.
Absolutely, yeah. Be sure to go follow the Locked On Blackhawks podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow it on Twitter at @O_Blackhawks. Thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. This is the Locked On NHL Draft live show, and we're going to bring on Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets in a second here. Oh, there he is. How's it going, Jay?
It's going. Blue Jackets have just picked their guy 5th overall. Not a name I was necessarily expecting, but
Who were you expecting?
I was expecting Eklund, honestly.
Yeah, I saw a lot of folks saying
McTavish going Eklund 3rd. I was like, right, okay. So we don't need defensemen. I'd kind of really written off all of the defensemen at 5th since we picked up 2 of them about an hour ago. And so I thought, well, Eklund is the best player still available. I think we need a guy that can play center. I'm not necessarily convinced that William Eklund is an NHL center, but I'm pretty happy with the Johnson pick. I mean, kid's exciting. He's good. Played center at University of Michigan, and like I said, we need centers maybe more than any other position in the league right now. So.
Yeah, this is a flashy kid, and he was a point per game as a freshman at the University of Michigan, and he is just such a skilled playmaker. Like, honestly, he's got great vision, great hands, great IQ, and I think that this is going to be a pick that will fit well in with Columbus, especially if a guy like Patrick Laine does kind of stick around. Kent Johnson's going to get the puck to Laine. And I think that this is a pick that I would get on board with if I was a Blue Jackets fan.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about the Blue Jackets is, more than anything else in the world, we need offense right now. Offense is Columbus is where offense goes to die. And it's been that way for basically since Artemi Panarin left a few seasons ago. We just, for whatever reason, we can't score. We can't do it. And so a guy like Kent Johnson, who probably won't be here next season, but a couple of seasons down the line when he's done developing, if he can get the puck to a guy like Laine, or another name, Oliver Bjorkstrand, who is quietly, I think, one of the better two-way forwards in the league right now. He's been our leading scorer for the past couple of seasons. A line like that could be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Let's not bury the lead any longer because you lost Seth Jones today. Your thoughts?
I kind of made my peace with it a while ago. Like, as soon as it came out that he didn't want to resign, I was like, oh, okay, here we go again. And I kind of adopted the opinion of like, well, if he doesn't want to be here, then I don't want him here. Fine, let's get him gone. Let's see what we can get for him. It's funny. I did a show with Jack of Locked On Blackhawks about, let's throw some trade proposals around. And our final trade proposal was actually a first and a second and Adam Boquist and Dylan Strome, which honestly is pretty close to the actual trade. Obviously, we swapped Dylan Strome out for a first round pick, but I'm pretty happy with that return, especially considering we flipped the second already for Jake Bean, who is probably going to be a second pairing defenseman on Columbus. But again, we just lost Seth Jones. We need some bodies on defense.
Yeah, you need some minute eaters, as they say. Seth Jones is a big minute guy, even if his results the last couple seasons have not been spectacular. You need somebody to fill that gap.
Yeah, I think the thing about Seth Jones is that he's not. I don't think he's necessarily as good as the hockey folks say. The eye test. He looks really good on the ice. I don't think he's necessarily as bad as the analytics say that he is either. I think he's probably somewhere in the middle. I've talked about it a lot this offseason, is, his strength is really in his transition play, his ability to leave the defensive zone, get into the offensive zone, which is not something that's like super readily available for advanced stats. And so when you look at his stats, I think they are, they look a little bit lacking because we're just not measuring what he's good at. But yeah, I don't necessarily think he's as good as, what is it, $9.5 million until he's 35, but I don't think he's as bad as all these people who are like, yeah, we'll give you like Robert Hagg and a third round pick for him.
That's absurd. I still consider him to be a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. Like, honestly, I love Seth Jones, from, covering the Maple Leafs. I've remember very much last year in the bubble how much of a force he was out there on the ice. And, to my understanding, he took a little bit of a step back this season, wasn't quite as forceful out there, but, there seemed to be a lot of off ice issues going on within that locker room, whether it was with, the whole Pierre-Luc Dubois thing and then Patrick Laine, and then the fact that everyone knew that their coach had one foot out the door for the back half of the season. I think a fresh start in Chicago. He reunites with his brother, Caleb. I think that it's a pretty good deal on both sides, to be quite honest with you. $9.5 million is quite a lot of money, but I certainly think that they're getting a quality defenseman in Chicago.
Oh yeah, I think it's 9.5. I think is probably okay for the next few years. When he starts getting a little bit older, when he hits 30 and passes, I think it might look a little bit less good. But yeah, I think it's easy to go into that trade and say, oh well, the Blackhawks got fleeced. Our annual fleecing of Stan Bowman has occurred, but yeah, it's a trade that both teams needed to make. Obviously, the departure of Duncan Keith, they didn't have a clear number one in Chicago. We had someone who can play, like you said earlier, he's a big minute eater. He can play probably upwards of 30 minutes a night, all 82 games in a season, and go back for more. So it's something that Chicago needed. We needed picks, prospects, a good young player like Adam Boquist. I'm really excited to see how he fits into the lineup. So, yeah, I do think it's probably me being a little bit of a homer. I do think we won the trade, but I think, everyone says that at first, but I think it's probably a lot closer than a lot of people think it is.
I think my takeaway from that trade is that not only did Columbus win in terms of assets, I think they won in terms of understanding where they are as a franchise, right? Where Columbus is saying, okay, we had a good competitive stretch, but we didn't get over the hump. We're going to retool really quickly or as fast as we possibly can while we still have some of these good players here. And we're going to try to get as many assets as possible to build into a really strong team, an all-around team, like that Columbus model, right? Like all four lines are difficult to deal with. You're never outmatched when you're on the ice, even if you don't have necessarily any offensive stars. Whereas Chicago, I'm not sure. Like, we didn't get into it too much with Jack, but I don't think Chicago is set up to be a competitive team at all right now. Like, they're just flat out not a good NHL roster. So acquiring Jones to me is like, when do you expect to be competitive? You're like 5 years away.
Yeah, it feels very much like they're trying to extend the lifespan of like the Kane and Taves.
Yeah, absolutely,
100%.
You know, they're kind of clinging to that. But yeah, I'm really happy with where Columbus is at the minute. You know, we had a pretty bad season last season, something that not everyone was expecting. The departure of Pierre-Luc Dubois was kind of the first thing to fall, and things got worse and worse from there. I wouldn't hate if sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I don't hate any of the moves we made. I think Patrick Laine could have had a little bit more of an impact, but I think a combination of trade, injury, John Tortorella moving across the country during a pandemic, I think are all, you know, pretty solid reasons for the Patrick Laine kind of been a little bit underwhelming. So I'm interested to see what the new coach is like. We promoted one of our assistants to head coach. He's been with the organization longer than I think any of the players currently on the roster. So, you know, he knows the team, knows the organization. I'm excited for what the team's going to look like next year. I think it's going to be a very different team to the one that we iced in January of this year, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So speaking of things to look forward to, whoever's coming up in the draft, William Eklund continues to fall. The Detroit Red Wings went to the defenseman Simon Edvinsson. So somebody's going to get a real good forward here coming up. I don't know how long Eklund's going to fall. It seems to be unfathomable that he'll keep on falling this far, right?
I would imagine have been trying to manifest an Eklund draft for a while now. So I think the next guy that's coming up, I think, is probably going to be pretty happy with how the draft's fallen so far.
No kidding.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yzerman kind of has a history of going off the board on draft day. Hey, like there was the Moritz Seider pick was a bit of a surprise. I think that was his first pick in Detroit. So very interesting.
They get themselves a top pair. Like Edvinsson is a big hulking guy, right? 6'4", 200 pounds, can skate, nice and physical player. Like that, they've got a top pair defenseman, and you could tell that. Like, look at what Tampa did, right? They built from the back. They got Victor Hedman. They had some skill up front, but they knew that they had to build a solid 4 defensemen, and that's exactly what they were able to do and win some championships. And it looks like Detroit's trying to do the same thing by taking up Simon Edvinsson. But by doing that, they do allow William Eklund to keep sliding. And I'm sure the guy who's joining us now, Kyle, has got to be pretty excited about that. The Sharks, 1.5 minutes left till they have to make their pick. Kyle, you stoked that your man might still be there?
If they don't pick William Eklund, I'm just leaving the live show. There's zero. I'm also like 30 seconds behind you, so this is going to be pretty funny. William Eklund is the best player in the draft. If you asked, you had Tony Ferrari on at the top of the show. Pretty sure he had him 1. Maybe I think Wallstedt might have been 1, but he's 1 or 2. He's 1 or 2 on almost everyone's boards except for like Sam Cosentino. And I think Bob had him at T4. This would be an absolute steal for San Jose. And this is one of the only guys that can play. This is a top line projection guy. He can get you 80 points if everything breaks right. And nobody, your Mason McTavishes, your Kent Johnsons, your Beniers are all kind of topping out at line 2. So I think this is exactly what San Jose needs. And I'm pretty excited because I didn't know if he was going to get here. I honestly thought Anaheim or Columbus or Detroit could take him. And here we are.
It's pretty sure. Anytime a player of that caliber drops, right? Like, I know we talked off the hop that from 2 to 9 is pretty chaotic, and there's a lot of players who are essentially even in very different ways. But Eklund seemed to be the guy who was the most clear-cut, high-end talent.
Bob McKenzie coming through.
Oh, yeah, Bobby Mack coming through saying, "Oh, who's with me? Who thinks it's Eklund?"
The Sharks scouting department also mentioned Eklund back in November or something like that. So I would be pretty shocked if it wasn't. Sorry, this is the only good thing San Jose has done in like 2.5 years. So
I mean,
did I hear there was something going on with Timo Meier?
Yeah, so rumors started popping up that he might be in play because he's been pretty underwhelming. Well, he's been underwhelming according to a bunch of different stats, but he's still only 24, makes $6 million this year next, and he'll be 26 at the end. But the Devils popped up as a possible trade partner. I was hoping for 4, but I mean, the rumor now from a guy I don't really know who he is. Apparently works on the Devils organization beat. He is reporting 29 or whatever that late Devils pick is. Kind of underwhelming for Timo Meier, but if they really want to shake it up, this would be the trade you have to make. But the prices have been exorbitant today, so I don't know why you're not getting more for Timo Meier on today of all days.
I mean, yeah, if someone's willing to pay up, 13 and a second for Rasmus Ristolainen, you think that Timo Meier might be able to get something in the teens, not the late 20s. Your pick's coming up here in about 10 seconds. You got Gary.
My phone is eerily silent right now. I don't know what's going on. It's either everyone's in shock or nobody's saying anything. I just don't.
As soon as the Ristolainen trade came through, I was like, "Oh, we're getting so much for Seth Jones."
And you did.
Yeah. If San Jose doesn't take Eklund, Brant Clark should be the choice because I think he offers the most.
William Eklund.
Is it really?
William Eklund your guy. Is the pick.
Yes!
He's going to the San Jose Sharks at 7 overall.
Yes!
7 picks in. The Sharks have to steal the draft with Eklund.
Hold on. I'm going to mute you guys for a second.
So apparently, Elliot Friedman coming out, and Friedman saying that they tried to move around and ultimately kept the pick and took Eklund. So I wonder if they were trying to move up in the draft to secure Eklund, but as he started falling, maybe when Mason McTavish went number 3, they realized maybe we don't have to move up and get this guy. They stay at 7 and they get him.
Yeah, probably what happened. Doug Wilson Jr. now runs the draft for San Jose. He's done it since 2017. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually trying to go backwards to somebody like a Chicago or something like that and pick up one of their seconds or thirds and do that. But I think with William Eklund falling,
yeah.
I think with William Eklund getting past Columbus, they probably had a good idea of who Detroit was going to take at that point. So I honestly, they're probably looking to trade back a couple spots and take somebody and more analytically inclined. But William Eklund is the no doubter. I don't have to talk about Brant Clark again for the rest of my life. It's great. I can just talk about William Eklund. I love Brant Clark. I think he's going to be the best defenseman. But I mean, William Eklund is just on a different planet in a draft where there's not many difference makers, right?
Yeah. So Kyle, you're a bit of a draft guy or a prospect guy. Tell us about William Eklund. What kind of player is he?
He's fast. He's not Fabian Lysell fast. Works hard. He's going to be a gamer. He's a winger, which is the thing, but he can drive play on the wing, which I think is nice. He doesn't need to be stapled to a center who's gonna give you the play driving. So they've taken a million wingers, so he'll just be the best winger out of all of them. But he's gonna give you offense. He's gonna compete on defense. He's not gonna be lost. He's not one of these prospects where it's like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing on defense. He's flying the zone. He's not battling. He's gonna battle. He put up 0.5 points per game in the SHL this past season as a 17, 18-year-old. That's really, really good. Like, that's historically good with up there with some other names. I don't have them off the top of my head, but what he did in the SHL translates incredibly well to the NHL. There's no timing like some guys like an Edvinsson where he has the open ice, so guys aren't on him as fast. In the bigger, faster, smaller rink NHL, Eklund's not going to have trouble flipping around and being able to compete with those guys. It's just, if you really wanted to, you could bring him over in September if you were a really desperate team, but they won't. But I don't see why September 2022 he's not in training camp.
It'll be a big boost to the Sharks if he can come over not this coming year, but the year after. I think that makes more sense for where they are organizationally as well. Yeah,
they're not. They are talking about a reset and being competitive this year, but if they're looking at trading Timo Meier for 29, they're internally publicly facing the reset because of the market, but internally they're definitely not. And this is the perfect pick to bring along with your Bordelos, your Gushins, your Weisblatts. Merkley, I guess, is still there. So yeah, I'm just pumped that they actually did the thing. I was really worried that we were getting Cole Sillinger. Out of Doug Wilson 2's mouth.
So the 8th pick is now in, and it is Brandt Clark going to the LA Kings. So that one makes sense. That was almost a chalk pick, that if Brandt Clark dropped to 8, which was almost pretty likely, that was going to be the pick there. I think, this is a solid pickup. The Kings need defensemen, and I think Brandt Clark is a good one, right? Right shot, good size.
They need offensive defensemen, right? Because the baby Bjornfot, and Mikey Anderson, they're all defense first. They still have Cale Clagg, but Brandt Clark gives them an actual, I don't want to say Drew Doughty replacement, but he does more of what Drew Doughty does than Bjornfoot or something like that. So this made sense, and they don't need forwards. Like, come on, look at their forward pipeline.
No, absolutely not. So that's going to be the pick here at number 8, and now the Coyotes are on the clock for the trade that they made with the Canucks, which netted them the number 9 pick, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson went the other way. And Kyle, I guess while we have you here, I mean, as the Sharks Locked On Sharks guy, you're pretty familiar with OEL and the Canucks. What do you think about this deal with them adding Ekman-Larsson into the fold?
I don't know. What do we think about them adding Tyler Myers or having all of the same guy?
I don't know if that's at all the same.
OEL has been trending down for like 5 years. He's not the guy. He's 30. He's not the guy that was putting up monster offensive numbers even 3 years ago. That's a big contract. He's taking up something like 10.1% of their cap now. I just don't understand why you're trading off all these little bad contracts for one bigger, uglier contract in the end. I agree. I guess Vancouver thinks that they're a playoff team, and everybody sitting here doesn't agree with Jim Benning, but that's why he's getting paid.
I do wonder if it's kind of a competition between Benning or Holland to see who can make the stupidest trades in the Canadian division.
The Canadian NHL teams, they're just competing for it with each other, who could do the worst. And then
Vancouver finished last.
I'll do nothing.
Yeah. Well, no, Kyle Dubas gave away Jared McCann.
Dubas paid us.
I still think that was a decent move. Honestly,
that was a good move.
I think they were hoping they would take Kerfoot, right? But I think that was a good little chess move from Kyle Dubas, that they essentially lost nothing from the expansion draft. And I know Leafs fans are really upset because they didn't want him to protect Justin Holl. But I understand the reasoning behind it. I don't agree with them protecting Holl over McCann either. But I get it that it's hard to find a top 4 defenseman making $2 million or less under the cap. I just think it's a lot easier than finding a Jared McCann for as cheap as they got Jared McCann.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the way that I've looked at it, and I spoke about it on Locked On Leafs for at least an hour over the last, couple of shows. So if you want more on that, go check out Locked On Leafs. But the Yotes still here on the clock, and
they could do anything.
Yeah, they really could. At number 9, this is the interesting part in the draft where it's there was kind of an established top 9-ish. Dylan Guenther is probably the best player left available, I would say.
Wallstedt
would make sense.
They need a goalie though, don't they?
They could go with the goalie and get Wallstedt, the Swedish kid, but we'll see. They're taking a break, of course, because that's always what ends up happening here. But they could go anywhere. They need a lot of talent, and they've got nothing, and they've got they got a bunch of picks now.
They have got 3 years of Andrew Ladd. How dare you?
He's playing too. He said he was reporting to camp. So Arizona's also a candidate to go off the board a bit, right? New GM putting his mark on the team. I guess off the board here would be Chaz Lucius, but I don't. Fyodor Svechkov could be the guy. They could, or Matt Coronado, if they really want to go for their guy. They've done it in the past. I guess Armstrong wasn't there, but I don't know. Arizona's an enigma because their team isn't anything. They have Victor Schuderstrom, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Bobby Mack has been right about everything so far, and he's saying that they're going to take Guenther. So
yeah,
we'll see. It seems the insiders are flexing this summer, hey? Frank
Bobby
Savinelli the other day was it was just a murder. Who goes out there and breaks 28 of the 30 picks over the course of 2 hours? I've never seen anything like it. And then Bobby Mack's just out there I'm going to pick every single pick in the first round, and I'm going to get them all right.
The thing about Bobby Mack is like he's been basically retired since the World Juniors, just off in his cottage, and here he comes. All right, I'm going to come back this weekend, and now he's breaking all of these, going like Woj style, where he's a pick ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, he posted a video where he was drinking margaritas earlier today.
We should have known it was happening, though, because for the last, 4 days, he's been like, oh, my first draft, I'm not doing since 1979. Then the next day, he'd be like, oh, I'm not doing it. He was just fake. He's literally probably sitting in a Muskoka chair right now, feet up, tweeting from his... Do you guys see that he tweets from his iPad? Yeah. If you go to his tweets, it says tweet from iPad.
How does he type so much on an iPad? I can't do that. He must have one of those keyboards that comes with it. But yeah, I mean, if Bobby Mack is half in the bag out here posting all the picks before they happen, that's the best thing that could happen, right?
Absolutely. I love it. Absolutely love it. Semi-retired insider is what his Twitter bio is now. That's it. Semi-retired insider.
That's like the dream when you retire from your job and you become a consultant and you just get paid to like show up like once or twice a year to a company and be like, no. Gunther's a good pick though. If they take Gunther, he's a trigger man. He's basically gonna score all your goals. And they got rid of Connor Garland, so this is the replacement who's gonna score the goals. He's not a 2-point a game player in the WHL, but if they would have finished out the season, he would have probably been north of 1.5 because he was 1 as a 17-year-old.
Earlier in the draft process, he was a little higher up on boards. Yeah. It seemed like he was likely to be a top 5 guy, and then didn't have a great under 18s like everyone was kind of expecting to happen, and just ended up falling. And here is the pick. Now,
I don't know if that was his fault though, because he was Shane Wright's like personal valet on wing, so he was deferring to Shane Wright, right? So
yeah. So Dylan Gunther is the pick officially.
That's a good pick at 9. Like you're not complaining. Ottawa probably wanted Gunther. But now that means they can go goalie or Chaz Lucius. But Gunther's a good pick. I like that pick. Coyotes getting to 9 just means they're taking whoever is left, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, there was kind of a top 9 here in the draft that was that's where it really tears off. I think like you had Matt Beniers and Owen Power as like those top 2, chalk it up. Those are going to be your top 2. And then like 3 through 9, really, you just had no idea what was going to happen. I think Mason McTavish coming in at 3 kind of was a bit of a surprise. And then you saw, Eklund falling all the way to 7, and then Dylan Gunther falls all the way to 9 when Ken Johnson goes 5 to Columbus. So, this is we knew it was going to be a weird draft, and it's getting a lot weirder as we get to number 10 and potentially get our first goalie in the top 10 since Carey Price was the first. Yeah, Carey Price. So back in 2005.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember when Al Montoya went second?
Oh boy. Yes. And I remember watching him in the World Juniors and being like, him?
Yeah, I mean, like that's what everybody said. Him?
That guy?
Oh man.
I really hope they do go goalie here though, because I like what they've been able to accumulate here, and I think we're going to get Ross Leviton and Brandon Pilsey up here from Locked On Senators to kind of help us go through their system. But I like what Dorian, as much as flack that he receives for being, with the Sens, I like what he's been able to do over the last couple of years. Really, he's picked up a lot of picks and prospects, and he's turned them into, pretty solid prospects. Tim Stützle was terrific last year. They got that defenseman Sanderson, who I think is going to be a really good player. So I'm excited to see what this pick is, because a goaltender is really all they need to set themselves up for success. But I think, Kyle, we're going to let you go so we can bring in the boys from Locked On Sens. But Kyle, thanks so much for joining us. Go check it out.
I'll be back.
Oh, absolutely. You'll be back throughout the night. Locked On Sharks if you want to check out Kyle.
We're going to go scream into a podcast for 45 minutes.
Hey, you're happy. You got Eklund. Love it. Love it. Love it. So, yeah, 2.5 minutes left on the clock for the Ottawa Senators. And, again, this was kind of a tier where it dropped off. But so they can go in a lot of different places here. Fabian Lysell kind of starts to come into focus. Chaz Lucius, another American player. Cole Sillinger, West Coast kid. And then, obviously, the goaltender, Jesper Wallstedt also could potentially be in play. And the last couple of years, we've really had some solid goalie prospects come through after some subpar goalie drafts. Went, a bunch of drafts where we just didn't get any first rounders. And now it seems like we're getting first rounders at the top end of, in the top 15 of drafts, top first half of drafts, almost every year, dating back to Spencer Knight. And then last year, we had another one go with the Russian Yaroslav Askarov. And now there's two potential guys who could go in the top 15 and one who could go here in the top 10 with the pick now in for the Ottawa Senators. But for whatever reason, the pick's in, but they're talking to Ken Holland. No,
are they trading it? No.
Ron Francis for whatever reason.
I genuinely would be surprised if the Sens would go with Kosa instead of Wallstedt, which is a mistake in my opinion. But I don't know that they'll be able to resist that kind of good Canadian boy.
You think they'll go Kosa over Wallstedt?
I think they might go Kosa. Yeah, that's my my hot prediction.
I don't know. Like, I think they definitely aren't afraid to go European, right? Like, they took Stützle last year.
True.
Their goalie, Philip Gustafsson, came from there. Marcus Högberg, another Swedish kid. Like, they know that they've got some pretty solid Swedish goaltending netminders in the system. So I wouldn't be shocked if they decide to go to that well again.
Yeah, I mean, like, Wallstedt is probably the best goalie prospect since
Vasilevsky.
Yeah, maybe. Like, he's. I was talking to a Swedish scout about him the other day, actually, and yeah, he's broken basically every record in the SHL for his age. He is potentially a top 3 goalie, like, of all time, maybe. Depending on who drafts him. So I'm top 3 Swedish goalie, or do you mean top 3 goalie?
Okay.
Sorry, it's super late here.
Well, I mean,
but yeah, I'm like as a goalie.
Yeah, no worries.
Really excited to see where Wallstedt and I guess Kosa go, but mostly Wallstedt.
Mm-hmm. Let's pretend that Ottawa doesn't even make a pick here. Who do you want for Columbus next up?
Oh man, I would love Arttu Ratu, who I think has been ranked like super low, and I think he's way better than he's been ranked. But I've seen him I've seen him ranked from 7 all the way up to, I think his elite prospect, his McKenzie ranking was, I want to say 28, which seems like super, super low. But yeah, I would be excited with Ratu. I wouldn't be mad about Lysell. I wouldn't be mad about Lucius. I might be a little bit mad about Cole Sillinger, but that's the thing is it's so hard to predict.
Bob McKenzie says that Ottawa takes Tyler Boucher. Sorry to interrupt.
Excuse me?
Who?
Yeah, Bob McKenzie says that Ottawa's going to take Tyler Boucher totally off the board.
God, I love Ottawa. Just does the most all the time.
This is like the Chinnikov pick from last year. So Tyler Boucher goes. This is a weird pick. This is completely off the board. Let me see where he was at in Bob McKenzie's rankings, because I don't even know if he was considered to be 29th in Bob McKenzie's rankings, and he goes 10th.
Wow,
yeah,
that is a big leap.
So
maybe they know something we don't, but it is very similar to the Chinnikov pick, except we did that at 24th instead of 10th. So
there was a lot of talent left on the board. I mean, a winger, I guess we should probably put that out there. He is a winger. And they go way off the board. And I mean, there's a goalie available for you here now still.
Yeah. It looks like Tyler Boucher, is he related to Brian Boucher? Because I'm seeing people.
Brian Boucher's son.
Boucher's son.
No.
That explains everything. Pierre Maguire is now part of the Ottawa Senators. You got to draft the hockey man's hockey kid.
Exactly. I would not be surprised. I'm sure Pierre Maguire's son is draft eligible this year as well. So I would not be surprised if his name's Ryan. If Ryan Maguire is an Ottawa Senator by the end of this weekend.
Oh man.
That's just...
There's nothing that's more hockey than nepotism.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Remember when Marty Brodeur drafted his son like in the 7th rounder and they spent it's just a 7th, but like he was not going to be an NHL goaltender, but they wasted a 7th round pick just
Jeremy?
to allow him to pick his son.
Yeah, Jeremy actually spent not last season, but the season before that, before we got shut down by COVID, he was over here in the UK as one of the team's, I think, 2nd or 3rd string goalies, which is a bit of a fall from being Marty Brodeur's son to kind of playing backup in UK pro hockey.
I can't wait to get the guys on Locked On Sens here to talk about this pick because they've been huge because the entire offseason they've just been doing a whole bunch of draft stuff, getting ready for it, seeing who they could add. I know they were really big, hoping that a guy like Gunther could fall to them. Obviously, the goaltenders were guys. I'm curious if at any point either of them felt like Tyler Boucher was going to be in the conversation, let alone the pick. And that's just still baffling to me. Let me see where else he last. I have the Athletics draft board, the top 100 consensus draft board for the Athletics. So that's between who does it for them? Sorry, Scott Wheeler and Corey Pronman. And they have him not in the 1st round.
Yeah, it seems like he was consensus 45 with the Athletic.
45 for the Athletics. So way off the board.
Yeah,
they might have been able to get him with like their 2nd round pick.
That's
why not move back? Like
I don't know.
Just
maybe the trades just weren't there and they really liked him, but
I guess.
Holy man. This isn't the first time Ottawa's gone off the board either. They're an interesting organization.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now that I say this, like Tyler Boucher is definitely going to be looks like Cole Sillinger is your pick at 12 for the Columbus Blue
Columbus
Jackets.
kid, Cole Sillinger.
They went with a local boy.
Yeah, we had such success with Jack Roslovic last season. I guess we're just gonna keep going with it.
Well, play for Sioux Falls.
Something that we don't talk about as much with you look at what's happening now with where players are coming from in these drafts, and like you can go back to Austin Matthews as well, who kind of started playing hockey because the Coyotes in Arizona. All the players now, like 2 NHLers or maybe a hopeful NHLer in Sillinger and Jack Roslovic with the Columbus Blue Jackets coming from Columbus. These expansion teams from the mid to late 90s are now reaping the rewards of kids who found those teams and got into hockey.
Cole Sillinger's the son of former NHLer Mike Sillinger.
Okay, well that's so. It doesn't apply to Cole Sillinger.
This is nepotism. This is a nepotism thing as opposed to.
But yeah, see, when Toronto does it, it's like cheap. But when Columbus does it, we've only got like 4 guys that are from Ohio in the entire league, so it's okay.
It has
Mike really Sillinger's from everywhere, right? He's like the suitcase guy, most traded guy in NHL history. So
I think he's Canadian though, like Cole Sillinger, but he played in Sioux Falls. So I guess that's where he's playing. And is Sioux Falls in Ohio? I don't even know. To be honest with you.
I want to say the Sioux Falls is in Michigan, but I could be making that up because my American geography
sounds
is
right. That sounds
like it just sounds right. So he spent last season with the USHL as opposed to the WHL because his team wasn't playing. He was more than a point per game in the USHL, and
I watched Cole Sillinger play a couple of years back at the Canada Winter Games. I had the pleasure of being able to call the games for them, and Cole played for Team Saskatchewan, which is why I know he's Canadian, because I remember literally watching him on Team Saskatchewan, and he was a heck of a player, one of the best in the tournament. There was a lot of really talented. Brant Clark was also at that tournament. Shane Wright, who's a projected number 1 pick for next year in that tournament. Mason McTavish. A lot of kids who were at that tournament are getting drafted today, if not tomorrow, like this weekend. It was a terrific tournament, and Cole Sillinger did stick out as one of the best of the bunch. At that point, he was 16 years old, I think. It was a few years back, maybe 15 years old. So he's grown into his body a little bit more, and he's progressed. And I think Cole Sillinger is going to be a nice little pickup here. That's 2 centermen, though. 2 centermen. I mean, obviously,
we have like 1.5 centermen at the minute.
Exactly. And one of them is moving to the wing. So Cole Sillinger, decent little pickup here.
Yeah, I thought we would go forward heavy. As soon as we moved Seth Jones and got Boquist and B, and I was like, right, we'll go in centerman 5th overall, probably forward 12th overall. I fully expect 25th overall to be some wild off the board choice that no one is expecting, because I think Yama gets bored like around the 20th pick.
So he just shakes it up.
Yeah, he's like, why not? He's already made 2 picks.
Let's get Ross Leviton in here from Locked On Sens, because boy, Tyler Boucher, not a name I was expecting to go in the top 10. What about you, Ross?
Guys, thanks for having me. It's quite a night of suspense and anticipation. And yeah, Pierre Dorion going way off the board. He had everyone, tempting fate, because a lot of people thought Chaz Lucius could be the guy, the center from the U.S. national team. So when he started out with the team name, you think automatically, are they getting the guy who's touted as one of the best shots in the draft? But no, they go classic Senators with that grit, sandpaper style that Tyler Boucher brings. Now, we didn't get a lot of him, and you can say that about a lot of players in this draft class with shortened seasons and whatnot, but for him, it was a major injury that took him out after only 12 games, but had a point per game in each of them. So to me, it's one of those situations where Trent Mann and the Ottawa scouting staff have earned themselves some leeway when it comes to their recent drafting, especially out of the U.S. You look back, Shane Pinto, early 2nd round in 2018, Jake Sanderson last year out of the same U.S. program. So I think Sens fans are willing to give a little bit extra leash to this scouting staff, but we did our pre-draft rankings. We took 8 different scouting entities, averaged them all out, and Tyler Boucher was 55th. So to say it's a reach at 10 would be an understatement.
Yeah, it's pretty big. And it looks like Ottawa kind of has a trend here. Gord Miller tweets out that Ottawa now has 5 players in their system who are sons of former NHLers.
Is
Brady
that
Tkachuk,
it?
Josh Norris, Logan Brown, Jake Sanderson, and Tyler Boucher.
Well, Ridley Gregg as well. His dad, Mark Gregg, played for the Philadelphia Flyers back in the day. They just traded Christian Wolanin last year, whose dad had a great career. Logan Brown's dad, I don't know if you mentioned him, was a great player for the Nordiques and St. Louis Blues. And yeah, it's a style for sure. People have said that for a while. I thought Cole Sillinger could have been the guy. His dad, obviously, heard you guys mention, played for pretty much every NHL team, including the Sens back in the mid-'90s. So yeah, I think that probably played a little bit of a role, but he's also just a prototype. You look, when this rebuild started, the first piece was Brady Tkachuk. And in my notes here, looking back at our Google Doc from throughout, and I think Pillar's going to hop on any second as well, I say, quote, poor man's Brady Tkachuk. He's going to start every scrum after the whistle. He's going to park in front of the net on the power play, and he's got a great set of hands. You see most of Brady's goals are from right in front of the crease. I think that's the same type of crash and bang type player that you're going to see. And I mean, this is an interesting situation for Ottawa because they've got stockpiled at pretty much every position. People thought maybe with Joey Decord leaving, are one of the goalies an option here? I'm glad they didn't, because they traded up to get Mads Sogard in 2019, the Great Dane, as we call him, who started his career 7-0 on this side of the pond. And he looks great, 6'8" goalie, and I know Costa's got some size on him too. But I'm glad they went skater. And like I said, huge surprise, but we're not new to that in Ottawa with even Brady Tkachuk. It seemed like it was off the board. So, they've done it before. Jake Sanderson last year, some people had it ranked 20th. So that looks like it's worked out pretty good. Led Team USA in ice time in the World Juniors as an 18-year-old, primed to be the captain. So I think it all comes back to them getting some leeway right now since 2018, having drafted really well.
It seems like maybe this pick, there could be some intangibles with a Tyler Boucher guy. Maybe this was someone that Pierre Maguire was banging the table on and said, hey, we got to get this guy. He's great in the room, great kid. One time in second grade, his teacher did something, and I don't know, probably some story about that. Classic Pierre. But I don't know, man. Like, to me, this is a pick that you probably could have gotten at some point down the road. Like you said, if he was a consensus, or not a consensus, but if he was like a mid-second round player, like rankings wise, probably A, either could have moved down, or B, potentially could have waited and got him in the second round.
Yeah, you could say that, but then also a guy like Mason McTavish, look how high he skyrocketed up boards from like 30th on the preseason, and then he goes 3rd overall. Tyler Boucher played 11 games and did what he could in all of them. So I don't know. This is the first kind of real off the board pick. But to me, this draft is going to be full of them going forward. So I think out of any year, you could probably throw the rankings out the window a little bit more. So I wonder what a full season would have brought. Now, I can't say that I'm brushed up as much as anyone, but I will say Pierre McGuire likely not involved when you have a guy with the amount of respect as Trent Mann. This is Trent Mann's draft, and there's no question about that. And it's kind of cool. People who don't know that.
McGuire apparently said he wasn't involved.
Yeah, he didn't want to make any
joking. Could you imagine he's on the job
we're all joking
weeks?
About McGuire because it's fun to do, right? But
yeah, it's easy. It
makes sense. He was brought in too late in the game.
For sure.
Could you imagine 2 weeks on the job? They're like, "Hey, Pierre, you're running the things here. You're running the draft. Who do you want to take?" And he's like, this Boucher kid. I've heard nothing but good things about him. Let's go with him. He's
ironically, Brian Boucher got on the Ottawa Senators recently for not allowing Jack Capuano to interview for a spot with the Buffalo Sabres. On Twitter, he was ripping the Ottawa Senators. So mildly ironic that they draft his son a month later.
Yeah, Billsy, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Glad to join.
So Ross gave us his thoughts on the pick. Let's hear what you have to say about Tyler Boucher, the newest Ottawa Senator.
Well, I'll start off with saying I like Tyler Boucher as a player, as a prospect. I think he brings a lot of things to the table. Now, when we were watching the draft live, I was jumping up and down with anticipation. And then the Senators said they selected Tyler Boucher. And I'll be honest, I stopped jumping around for a little bit and started
muted the TV right away.
They just passed on. And I like Tyler Boucher as a player, but I heard you guys talking. It did seem like he's a guy that if they were really keen on, they could have traded back or maybe even waited till the second round. But, you know, it's too early to start getting down on draft picks, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about what I like about Tyler Boucher. Like, he's someone that he's going to work hard every single shift. I think that this kid is going to be a guy, he's battling hard for pucks in the corner. I think he's going to make the jobs of a playmaker and a sniper on his line really easy because he's definitely willing to do the work to get the puck. And I think he already has good size, 6'1", 200 pounds. Like, it seems like he's kind of a pro frame guy. My only reservations are I think there was a lot of talent left on the board, and I might have been a little more excited about a handful of other guys instead of Tyler Boucher. But I am excited that we got a player that I think it's great that his dad has lots of NHL experience. So obviously his on-ice and off-ice work habit is probably very good when you have a good example like your dad there. So I think there's a lot to like here, but maybe we'll be seeing if we regret this a little while later when we're seeing the players that are being passed up on.
And enough of saying that goalies are going in the top 10. That's 3 years in a row now. We've been teased. First with Spencer Knight. He goes 13th. Then Askarov goes 11th. And now the guy who we had as top of our rankings at 6th was Jesper Wallstedt. And now we're at what? Pick 14, and he's still on the board. So we got to stop saying goalies are going in the top 10. They even said 2 of them maybe, and now we're going on pick 15 or 14 rather, without any.
Yeah, Matthew Coronado, the pick here for the Calgary Flames at number 13. I mean, this is another spot where a goaltender could have been, had. I mean, I guess, Jacob Markstrom, but I mean, he's got 5 years left on his deal. You think you get a goalie, maybe they could have went goaltender, but I guess getting Coronado still out there, not a bad pickup. So pick 14 is in, and this is the pick that this is the Rasmus Ristolainen pick that they got for Ristolainen. Right? Yes?
Yep.
Yeah, right. For some reason, I was thinking 13, but there's that forfeited pick by Arizona. Guys, do you have thoughts on the deals that went down today? And I guess specifically, like, does the Ristolainen deal, did that surprise you as much as it surprised most of us?
Yeah, no question about that. I'm glad Ottawa stayed out of that. They've talked about acquiring kind of a veteran top 4 defenseman, but that's not the guy I would target by any means. So an overpayment for sure, but I think more so Pillsy and I is we're actually in the same place right now, just in different rooms. So finally got to have a live episode of Locked On Senators coming up after the first round finishes that we'll post as soon as possible. But when it comes to the trades today, and we were looking at each other on the bike trail just saying, thank God that we don't have to do any Locked On now. Just stay out of the mayhem. The Seth Jones trade I thought was by far the most egregious of the day. Especially, I think the first report I read said Kirby Dach was in it as well, and I just kind of, my eyes went full wide. But even still, giving up as much draft capital as they did, and then the contract that followed. Hey, it's great for our industry for sure, and it made for a lot of good talk today.
Lots of defensemen on the move.
Oh,
gotta wonder if people see this market for defensemen, and there's more defensemen that are being moved. But it looks like we're not going to get very many trades at this draft. I mean, usually there's a hint of something by now, but I think everything that was going to moved earlier in the day.
Yeah, we saw so many moves earlier today. I mean, obviously kicked off with number 9 getting dealt to Vancouver, then 13 we saw get dealt to pick 13 technically because the forfeit. This is bothering me. I hate that they have the forfeited pick in there. Like, it's just so jarring to see because I know that it is right now we're on the 13th pick, but it says pick 14 like on all the graphics, and it just is mind-boggling to me to try and keep that in mind. But anyways, looks like this pick is about to come in, and I guess they'll figure out what exactly they're getting in a replacement for Rasmus Ristolainen. I mean, there's still some really good players out there, and it's Isaac Rosen. So Isaac Rosen, a winger, real slight kid. Look at that, 156 pounds, 5'11", 156, a Swedish kid. Anyone have some thoughts on Isaac Rosen, who came in as the number 18 prospect on Bob McKenzie's board?
I'll just say it's another Swede that's not named Jesper Wallstedt. Like, Mikey, when's Wallstedt coming off the board here?
Man, could potentially someone's got to move up. I think we're at the point now where we were just talking about how there hasn't been any trades. I think at this point, there's got to be some teams that are going to look to move up and get that type of talent, because probably not here at Dallas because they have Jake Ottinger, who they like. I would assume that Shesterkin and Georgiev is a pair that the Rangers enjoy. May 17, maybe we could see a potential Binnington replacement in Wallstedt with the St. Louis. If no one moves up, that might be the closest spot I could see him going at this point. Edmonton at 20 is interesting as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving to go around, but we're going to wrap up with our wonderful Sens guys and Jay as well. And thank you all for coming on here, and follow Locked On Senators and Locked On Blue Jackets. Check them out. They've got lots of content for you heading into the summer. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of the night.
Cheers, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right, and we're going to bring it right back and bring on Rachel Donner and Danielle Butcher from Locked On Flyers.
So it's funny, though. We had, through the first half hour, 2 picks, and then the following hour, we've had, 13 picks? So it's starting to come a lot quicker. Yeah, pace has picked up, thankfully. Ladies, how are you? How are you enjoying the draft so far?
The draft is always
better
fun.
if we had a pick.
Very true. Very true. Isaac Rosen ended up being the pick there for Ristolainen. How'd you feel about that?
We had in the mock draft Chaz Lucius, who was available, and I'm trying not to cry right now because I've had my eye on him for at least a few months as a distinct possibility should the Flyers have had that pick. And he just seemed like a Flyers kind of guy, a center with a really good two-way game. And I just think he would have fit right in the Flyers system. So it kind of bums me out, but that's what you get with an aggressive GM, I guess, right?
Yeah.
You're not excited about Risto?
I mean, hours have passed, and I can't say I am at this point, but we'll have to see. Apparently Chuck Fletcher has been looking to try to get him for 3 years, so he got his guy. Let's see if it'll work out.
He seemed like a very Philly guy, right? Like the Broad Street Bullies. He's going to be out there hacking and whacking. He's going to be a tough guy and really provide some muscle out there, I guess, for the Flyers out in front of Carter Hart. So to me, his style of play makes sense for the Flyers organization. And it looks like we actually have a trade. So like I was saying, this seems like a good spot for someone to trade up and take the goalie. I wonder if this is what we have here. It looks like, is this the Detroit Red Wings moving up in the draft? Maybe. Let me see if I can try and get some more information here. Looks like Detroit is moving up from 23 to 15 in a trade. I would be shocked if it's not for Jesper Wallspat, the goaltender there from Sweden, someone who we projected they could take at number 6.
Yeah, Stevie Y, you can't
Jedi
sleep on him, you know?
Man's a Jedi. Absolute Jedi.
Seems like Detroit is really focused on improving their goaltending this offseason.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because when I saw the trade go down where they acquired Nedeljkovic, I kind of thought, okay, that probably puts them out of the running for taking a goaltender in the first round. But seeing them move up, that could be a potential spot for the goalie to go. Perhaps also, there are some good players that just keep dropping. I mean, Chaz Lucius is a very talented player who could potentially be a spot here for them. Fabian Lysell, another Swedish kid who played in the SHL this past season. So there's some real good players. And Fedor Svechkov, I think, was the guy who Tony Ferrari was saying he expected may go a little bit higher than people expected. This probably feels like a good range for that. And we do know that Detroit and Stevie Y have some really good track records when it comes to European players.
Yeah, there were at least a couple of people who had the Flyers taking Svechkov at this slot, and he would have been a really good addition to the team as well.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Looks like the trade is coming through, and just trying to see what happens. While we wait for it, why don't you
648 and 138, it looks like.
Okay, so they give up a second-round pick, which is pick 48, and a fifth-round pick, 138, to move up 8 spots. And
pretty hefty, actually.
It is hefty. Well, I don't know, a 2 and a 5 to move up 8 spots when you got some decent talent still on the board. I mean, I think it drops off, right? Like you look at 15 to 23, the talent level does have another drop-off. So I think giving up a second-rounder to get up there and a fifth, I suppose, we can't say. I mean, there's been some good fifth-round picks, Jamie Benn to name one. I think it's a decent deal, actually. It's a price that I'd be willing to pay. Just waiting. It looks like they're about to make the pick. I guess while we wait for that, let's still get some Flyers content here. And while we have you here, Shane Gostisbehere out the door along with some draft picks. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in our most recent show that came out today. It sucks to see Shane go, but I mean, this is something that we've been preparing for 2 years. The only thing that, you don't like to see is them moving picks to try to move him for cap space. Ideally, I would have been okay with them trading picks for Voracek or something like that. But it just didn't seem like it was going to work out. Coaching staff, they didn't seem like they were high on Gostisbehere anymore. So not too bad. I mean, cap space is hard to come by, but then you turn around and get Rasmus Ristolainen. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is an interesting way to kind of replenish that cap that you just opened up for yourself. What happened to Gostisbehere like 2-3 years ago when he first came into the league? Seemed like he was going to be a top pair guy, and then now he's a cap dump. Like, what happened here?
I mean, I would say that he'd actually started to come back a little bit this past season, like the second half of the season. He played really well, contributed a lot, didn't make a ton of mistakes. And it seemed like there could be like a resurgence of his career in Philly, but I guess like the bridges had been burned at that point, and there just wasn't a trust there that he could maintain that level of play for any significant length of time. So I think they just kind of like decided to cut their losses.
Also, he's had like a couple of injuries these past 2 years too, that just every time he was getting back on his feet, he would get hurt, have to be pulled from the lineup, and then other players would perform over him. So he really didn't have great luck these past 2 years.
So do you think he can refine his game in Arizona, or is he kind of is what he is, a third pair fringe NHLer at this point?
No, I definitely feel like he can reshape his career. I do think that he's an NHL player. I don't think that he would have to fight to make it onto the third pair. I think if you limit his 5-on-5 minutes, but give him time to flourish on the power play, that can rejuvenate him this season. And then I expect him to try to fight for a second pair for me. I'm very high on Gostisbehere. He's very dear to my heart.
So we were right. The trade is for Detroit to come up and get a goaltender, but it's not the goalie we thought it was. Sebastian Cossa becomes the first goaltender off the board.
Wow.
The Fort McMurray native from Alberta.
Hey.
So
Fort McMurray represent. That's where I grew up.
Really? So you might have some friends that may know the Cossas. You know the Cossas from Fort Mac? Everyone in Canada knows each other, right?
I don't, but super cool to see a Fort McMurrayite drafted in the first round. That's pretty cool.
17 1-1 record, a 157 goals against, and a 941 save percentage with 4 shutouts this year with the Oil Kings. Look, Costa's probably one of the best Canadian goalie prospects we've seen in years. Typically, when you see goaltenders get picked, they're either from the U.S. or they're from Russia or elsewhere in Europe, like Sweden or whatever. But the Canadian Cossa becomes the first goaltender picked in this draft. This is somewhat of a shocker. And Wallstadt's sitting there, but they decide to go Sebastian Cossa. Crazy.
Detroit's gone off the board twice now.
Interesting trading to move up for him when he might have been available.
He could have. There were some rumblings that like he may be the player off the board. He could potentially be the first goalie, but I didn't think that was going to be likely. But maybe they did. Maybe there were rumblings that someone was looking to put together a package to move up and get him, or perhaps they knew he wasn't going to get past St. Louis at 17. So he said, you know what, let's go and get our guy. And they did. And they've got some real solid young defensemen coming up. They got some good, solid forwards. They just have a pretty barren goalie pipeline. I know that they did just trade for Nedeljkovic, but that's what, a 23-game sample size this year where he broke out. Are you really going to hang your hat and say this is our goalie of the future? You're probably not that convinced. Like, you're hoping so. You think he can be that, but I don't think it should persuade you from doubling down at the goaltending position and getting themselves a real stud ace number 1 in the draft in the first round. So two more minutes left on the clock. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, Rachel Danielle, before we let you go, the Flyers have some cap space left here heading into free agency. What do you expect them to do with it? Where are they trying to fill gaps in their lineup?
I mean, I think number 1 on the list is a backup goaltender. And then we have to sign Carter Hart and Travis Sanheim and maybe get some forward depth. So a little tall order for $10 million of cap space.
Do you think they give a bridge deal to Carter Hart after the last season, or do they maybe take advantage of an off season for him and try to go long-term now while maybe he can't command the high salary that he likely will be able to in the future?
I think we're thinking bridge deal. It would be nice to try to get him long-term on a short deal, but I think that they're going to try to go bridge deal just because of the other contracts that they need to sign this offseason and next. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go bridge for this one.
Makes sense. It's the way that most of the NHL operates, right? Is they do the conservative thing. They don't want to take the big risks. But I mean, I think maybe this is why I'll never be hired as a GM. But I would look at Carter Hart right now and say, "Hey, kid, we got confidence in you. We're going to sign you to the end of the end of time, but you're not going to get your $8 million a year. It's going to be a lot lower than that." And see how their agent likes that. But you never know.
Yeah,
probably going to be a bridge deal.
I wouldn't be so. I mean, I wouldn't hate that, right? But we'll see. I mean, Chuck, he's done some good things, but he's also done some questionable things. So I don't know how this one's gonna go.
All right, thanks so much for joining us, Rachel and Danielle. We really appreciated it. Everyone, please go check out Locked On Flyers.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining us.
Our pleasure. All right, Mike, who do we got on the board next here? The New York Rangers.
We do have the Rangers. They made a deal earlier today getting Pavel Buchnevich. I know we might have
Pavel Buchnevich.
Yeah, sorry, moving Pavel Buchnevich and picking up a second-round pick. I think we have a Locked On from the Blues, Thomas Welch from Locked On Blues on the Blais for Buchnevich trade. That potentially we can play for you guys right now and get a St. Louis perspective on the deal, as St. Louis also up after the Rangers here in the draft.
Let's do it.
What's up, guys? Thomas Welch here, host of the Locked On Blues podcast, here with your Locked On Now for the Pavel Buchnevich trade. Doug Armstrong's done it once again. Swindled the Rangers out of one of their top scorers of the season last year, offering Sammy Blais and a second-round pick in 2022. If you hadn't heard of Buchnevich, he scored 48 points for the Rangers last season in 54 games. 20 goals, one of those goals came on the power play, so this is not a specialist Mike Hoffman kind of guy. He's going to bring it 5-on-5. He's going to bring it every game, and that's what I expect him to do for the St. Louis Blues. The best thing about this trade, in my opinion, Buchnevich is 26 years old. So although he is an RFA and the Blues will have to extend him, I think he could be a potentially huge piece for this team moving forward and extending their Stanley Cup window.
All right. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense for St. Louis, right? Like, Buchnevich is a good player.
Absolutely. I know there was a lot of teams that were in on this. For whatever reason, it seemed like the Buchnevich Rangers partnership kind of spoiled. I don't know if they just couldn't agree on a contract or if this stems back to the whole Tom Wilson thing where they're just looking to get beefy and meaty. Sammy Blais is that guy. Like he's going to come in and add some size to that bottom six. But, I mean, a second rounder and a bottom six guy for Pavel Buchnevich, who's a top-line winger, who came off a career year. What did he score? 28 goals this season for them. I was really surprised that was what they landed on as a return for him. I would have thought that there would have been something, another team would have been offering up something a little better. Clearly not. But yeah, it was kind of a weird deal for me from a Rangers perspective. But now St. Louis has to get him signed. And speaking of the Rangers, they just made their pick. Brennan Othmann is selected 16th overall winger, and Othmann's another one of those players that I got to watch live at the Canada Games a few years back. He's a former teammate of Shane Wright, and those two have kind of been attached at the hip for a while. And Hoffman, now a year older than Wright, able to get drafted. And I think he's a good player, and this is another good pickup. So they lose a winger in Pavel Buchnevich earlier today via trade, and then they kind of replace him. I guess not quite literally, because he's going to take a couple of years to develop, but they replace him with Brennan Othmann here with the 16th pick.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I mean, you look at the trades that have happened here, and we talked about like the return for Buchnevich is not nearly what we expected. I think it's fair to say that right now the market is extremely high for large defensemen, and not that great for forwards, especially wingers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're looking at what's going on in the NHL, and it's a copycat league. And you take a look at, the last few championship winners, right? Back to Washington, who was a pretty heavy team, St. Louis, who was a heavy team. And then back-to-back years, you've got Tampa Bay, who's got a bunch of mutants on their squad, some big boys. So it makes total sense that at this point, the league has shifted and they all want to get big hulking defensemen, and they also want to have some toughness and some heaviness up front as well. And I'm going to be I won't be surprised if we see, even in free agency, some of these bigger, kind of grittier players get more money than the skill guys. I mean, I think the reports out there that Zach Hyman could be getting north of $5 million on an 8-year deal, which is a lot when you consider that equates to 5 times 8? It's $40 million. I mean, Taylor Hall only got a $24 million deal on, less term, but that's all he was able to get in total salary. And Taylor Hall is quite the player and the type of skill guy. So it definitely seems like grit is something that is certainly starting to become a priority for general managers in the NHL.
Absolutely. And I got to say, if I'm Mark Bergevin right now, I know you just lost Shea Weber to injury and essentially retirement, but I'd be looking at moving Ben Sherratt and Joel Edmondson right now, just based on the market on big defensemen.
Yeah.
Like
first round picks for him, of course.
Well, I don't know if they'll get first rounders, but they'll get something bigger than the actual value that they're bringing right now. And I think they've got a couple of years before they're going to be highly competitive again. So move out players who are signed to fairly reasonable contracts, big guys who just prove they can get it done in the playoffs. I think that's what's on. They should have been aggressive about it heading into this. I know it's scary to go into a year where you only have Jeff Petrie essentially as a trusted defenseman, but man, take advantage of this and reset.
Absolutely. Let's get Kyle back in here from Locked On Sharks. He said that he was going to rejoin us, and here he is. Kyle, we're now halfway through the draft, and Sebastian Cossa ends up being the first goaltender off the board. Would you say that was a shock to you when you saw Detroit trade up to 15?
Yeah. Wallstedt put up, again, SHL numbers that nobody has put up, like not even Henrik Lundqvist put up SHL numbers what he did. Guys at any prospect age that put up the numbers that Wallstedt did in the SHL become NHL good goaltenders. There's just no two ways around it. Kossa's my size. I'm 6'6". I think he's like 6'5" or something like that, and he's kind of unorthodox, but there's a lot of red flags when it comes to how he plays goaltender, whereas Wallstedt is that steady technician. Why did they trade up? I'm getting out of my serious voice here. Why did they trade up to take Cossa that high? It doesn't make sense, right?
Honest, I do not know, unless they got some sort of intel that Cossa was a player that potentially there was interest from St. Louis. Maybe they could have been interested. Edmonton perhaps could have been interested.
Edmonton, I think, is taking a goal. Well, who knows what Edmonton is doing, but Edmonton should take.
Nobody knows what Edmonton's doing.
I don't even think Ken Holland knows what Edmonton's doing. That Zach Hyman contract, boy, what kind of world do we live in where there's a bidding war for Zach Hyman for 8 years? He's a useful player, but man, that's a lot. Who did Zach Bolduc went to St. Louis?
Yeah, Zach Bolduc. So
Chaz Lucius is a center, and he's better than all of these guys.
Yeah, he's sliding right now. I mean, him and Wallstedt are the two guys who have slid down the draft boards, and those are the two kind of top players available. Of the picks that have been made, I guess, over the last, when we leave you, probably about 10 picks ago.
Sharks pick right before Ottawa went hard.
Right, which interesting selection as well. We talked about that with the Locked On Sens guys. But which one of those picks, maybe I guess from 11 through 17 so far, entices you? Which one of these picks do you like? Who got a really good player that you think?
Isaac Rosen at Buffalo. Off the board,
Really?
But he's underrated. He should have been, again, Swedish. I don't know why we have to just draft North Americans, but Isaac Rosen's a high school guy. That's going to be a pick where people are like, oh, Kevin Adams, can't even spell Kevin right, and make fun of him for that pick, like the Jack Quinn style. But if you're taking a swing on rebuilding your team, I mean, I'd rather have Isaac Rosen than Brennan Othman or Zach Bolduc or Zach Lura or Svechkov or Pastiyov. Isaac Rosen's really good. That's a skill pick. that they're trying to build something with. So I really like that. Coronado also scored like an absolute machine. Yeah, I really like that pick for. I don't really like the Sillinger pick. I mean, he's got skills, but I think I'd rather just go with Lucius or Coronado in that spot personally.
Do you maybe have a theory as to why a guy like Chaz Lucius is at this point falling down the draft board?
Maybe people see him only as a goal scorer. He's got the best shot in the draft. Maybe because he's just a goal scorer. That's how people see him. United States NDTP guy. So like maybe that's kind of affecting him when the other ones went high. I don't really know because I don't know why he wasn't really breaking into that top 9 either, because he's similar in skill to some of those guys like a Genther. Like Genther is a WHL goal scorer. Chaz Lucius is also a goal scorer, just from a different league. I don't know what the dissonance is there between those two, but Chaz Lucius is good. Somebody like Winnipeg can add Chaz Lucius and run Chaz Lucius out there with Cole Perfetti, and that's a heck of a line.
Yeah, he scored 13 goals this year. Like,
that's his thing. Like if you have a scouting report from like elite prospects there, I bet you it mentions his goal scoring and how lethal he is.
Yeah, 13 goals in 12 games.
Yeah, and his year before, I think he scored well as like a 16, 17-year-old. Like I don't get it. And there's not like, it's like Fabian Lysell is the guy, if you are trying to swing on the absolute most upside, Fabian Lysell is through the roof skilled. Yeah. But he's got some off-ice things, like normal off-ice things. Like he's 17 and requested a trade, I think from Frölunda to wherever he plays or somewhere to Frölunda. So like there's that kind of ego stuff with him, but I don't really think there's that with Chaz Lucius. Like I don't really get it.
Usually when you see a guy who has that much offensive potential slide this far, it's because they're 5'7", and Lucius is not that small. So it's
it's not
very
the
weird.
Caulfield. Yeah.
It's like you're looking at it and you're like, maybe it's because his name is Chaz.
His brother's name is Cruz, and he's available next year.
Oh my goodness,
Chaz and Cruz.
That's some interesting parents.
So next year, by the way,
that Chaz Lucius, the pick to the Winnipeg Jets here at pick 18.
That's 2 years in a row that they got lucky, because last year Buffalo went full unplugged control and took Jack Quinn over Perfetti. That's a good pick for Winnipeg. That's a really, really smart pick. I don't know what Winnipeg's doing either, really. With like Vinny Heinola playing 1 game this year or whatever it was, but you can't get around the fact that was a good pick. I can't believe Jesper Wallstedt didn't go before Sebastian Cossa.
The Oilers. Available. I mean, he's not going to Nashville, obviously, because they took Askarov last year. So, I mean, it's very possible that Wallstedt could drop all the way to Edmonton here at 20, and that would be a home run for a team that needs a goalie so bad.
And you can't screw that pick up. It's not like you can take somebody random and there's like when you took Kyler Yamamoto, you could have been like, oh, should you have taken Eli Tolvanen or Josh Norris, something like that. There's no, if you take Jesper Wallstedt, people would be like, great pick, Ken.
Yeah.
Way to go, buddy.
Like that was the pick. Absolutely.
But let's just, before we go on, you just said the Edmonton Oilers can't screw up that pick.
Well,
let's give them a chance.
If they took Wallstedt, it's an
all they've done is screw up picks for 2 decades.
The caveat is that if they took Wallstedt, it's a good pick. If they don't take Wallstedt, then it could go any number. They could take like Ty Voigt. I don't know. That's probably too far down. They could take, I don't know. They could take somebody. Mackie Samoskevich. I don't know.
Edmonton media was saying that the Oilers really wanted Cossa, which makes sense because he was playing with the Oil Kings, and they like to draft from the Oil Kings. But
I think
I don't know. This is a gift. This is a gift for the Oilers.
That division in the WHL is also really bad. FYI, if you want a red flag on Sebastian Cossa, that division was horrible. So he looked much better than he potentially might be going forward.
Very interesting.
The Oil Kings are always unreal too, so it's like they have fake stats almost.
Yeah, it's like the London Knights.
Yeah,
the OHL, right? It's
like thing. The goalies, every goalie that they ever have is unreal. Like who they have, can't believe I'm blanking on him, but a Canucks pick who they drafted in the 3rd round Leafs pick who they drafted in the 3rd round a couple of years ago.
For a goalie?
Yeah. Ian Scott.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so Ian Scott, who you look at his stats, you're like, oh, this kid's unreal. And I think he was an Edmonton Oil King. if I'm not mistaken. And it was like, oh, he played for the Oil Kings. So
if Wallstedt doesn't go 20, he's gonna keep falling, right? Because Boston has Swayman and Vladar. Minnesota has Kokkonen.
Boston, that's a sneaky one. Sorry, he just actually played for Prince Albert, not.
What a great city name. I hope Nashville does something crazy. Like Logan Stankoven would be so much fun right here. Logan Stankoven is shorter than Cole Caulfield. There's no way. I think his listed height is like 5'8". I don't think there's any possible chance that he's 5'8". And he's not even the shortest guy in the draft. Sean Barons, I think, is 5'6" or 5'5".
All height listings in the NHL or junior leagues just take with a grain of salt. Because, like, okay, I went to the NHL Awards in Vegas in 2014, the year that Carey Price won the Hart Trophy, and I met JG Pajot in like a hallway somewhere, listed at 5'10". I was at least 3 inches taller than JG Pajot. I am a generous 5'7". So I do not believe any height listing in the NHL. Like I've met PK Subban listed at 6. No, he ain't. He ain't 6 feet tall. He's like maybe 5'10".
Yeah. No. There's no, especially on the smaller end. There's no way those guys are that tall.
However, Zdeno Chara might be taller than 6'9". He is a giant.
He's a mutant. He's an absolute mutant. Scott had silly putty for knees to injure. Hope he can. Yeah, he did. He does. And I was wrong. He played for Prince Albert, but his stats were disgusting. Prince Albert also had an unreal year that season. That's why I was confused by that. But
so Edmonton did take Wallstedt, by the way, which is an absolute gift for their organization. And great job not screwing that up, Edmonton.
That's a home run, like McDavid level home run. You can't screw it up by taking Wallstedt.
I don't think they ever actually thought that Wallstedt would fall to them. Like
no, that's probably why they were talking Costa, right?
Yeah,
well, Costa would have made sense, which is why I think this is interesting. If Costa would have fell to them at 20, and is this pick is it in? Like, technically Nashville hasn't made their selection yet, but I'm assuming you're seeing this by like Bobby Mack or something.
Oh yeah, how did you see? Who did Nashville take?
I don't know.
Because Bob retired.
I was some insider just scrolling across my screen. Now I lost it.
That's a very dangerous game to play some insider because
oh boy, it could be smart.
Probably a fake now. Okay, so it's not official yet. We'll see.
Yeah, not official yet, but
I don't think we should skip over Nashville. Nashville deserves a little credit for what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Do they?
However, should they go best player available? Hang on, let's talk about this for a second. Should Nashville go best player available and take Wallstedt here? I know they don't need a goalie, but if you go best player available, and then you can use him as a trade chip going forward.
It's very NFL of you.
Wow, I mean,
I just don't know if NHL GMs think like full honestly. Do NHL GMs think like that? They don't even use offer sheets.
Some GMs maybe, but
I feel like they're very like we have Askarov and we have Saros. Why would we ever take a goalie? Not thinking about the ramifications.
Extremely draft by need as opposed to best player available.
Which is are you guys a draft by need or draft by best player? Because I'm a best player because you could fire your coach, fire your GM.
Absolutely.
Your system. Yeah.
Things change so quickly. You know, like I look back at like drafts where a team will take a goaltender and you'll see them be like, oh well, they have this, and this goaltender in the organization, and like in 2 years, all those guys are gone. Things can change so quickly,
or they don't turn into anything.
Yeah,
well, that's
exactly.
That's like Ottawa, right? Ottawa has 6 goalies, but if none of them are going to rise out of the pile, then you don't have any goalies, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the old you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback situation.
What's going on here? Why are they going back to
do you guys
Oilers moving back?
Oilers are trading?
Moving back. Do we have another trade?
Should we yell Ken like Khan in Star Trek?
This might be speculation here.
Who are you reading that from?
Name names, Andrew.
Just a Flames fan, honestly.
Oh, so he's hoping that happens, so he doesn't have to worry about trying to put the puck past Wallstedt for the next decade and a half.
I honestly, who is Nashville taking here? Because who'd they take last year? They took Askarov, and the year before they took
Fabro?
Honestly, yeah, Fabro was a couple of years ago.
And Ferrance?
A few years ago now.
Yeah.
Fabro was the same year as like Matthews and all that. I mean, Fabian Lysell is still out there. Lysell could potentially be a pick. Fedor Svechkov.
Actually, you know who they should take? Aatu Ratu. Pair him with Eli Tolvanen. Two little Finns rolling around.
Yeah, Aatu Ratu would be a nice little pick there. He's another guy who kind of the opposite of Mason McTavish, where he started out as one of the most highly ranked prospects and fell all the way into well, I guess basically the 20s, it looks like. I know in most rankings he has fallen out of the teens and into the 20s.
He's my favorite prospect in the whole 2021 draft. He was the number one guy this time last year. The number one guy on the board. He's been the number one guy. I just don't think. I think he got off to a bad start and he didn't put up eye-popping numbers in Liga. And then when he got cut from the junior team, he took a little bit off. And if you watched his games in January, February, March afterwards, he was a completely different player. He went down to, is it Mestis? That's the second league? I think so. He went down there, absolutely destroyed for 2 games, and then came back up and was a different player. The thing about Ratu is he didn't forget how to play hockey. He didn't forget to be that number one guy. He just went through some adversity. And if it was more of a normal year.
So the pick is in, and it is Fedor Svechkov. So, yeah, it was Svechkov who they end up taking the forward there, centerman.
Safe.
Yeah, so Svechkov's going to end up being the pick for them, which I think is probably
safe.
I think I said either Svechkov, Lysell would be one of the 2 choices there, so it makes sense to me.
Yeah, defensive center. If that's what you're going for.
They need everything realistically. That's a team that's rebuilding. They didn't need a goaltender, so that wouldn't have been a draft by need, but I think Svechkov at this point is pretty much where we expect him to go, and that means actually Berkshire that Tony Ferrari's crazy guess of Svechkov going ahead of Wallstat comes true.
He's been killing it, honestly. He was on for 10 or 15 minutes, threw out some big possibilities of this draft, and he's essentially nailed everything that he said. So props to Tony Ferrari.
Yeah, I should reach out and see if he wants to come on and gloat about him getting everything correct in this draft.
I think the only thing he got wrong was that he said Svechkov would be top 10.
Yeah,
I don't think he said that was going to be top.
Did
he say
out there?
Yeah,
right?
That was his bold thing, but it wasn't necessarily.
Okay, gotcha.
I think what he said was he thinks he's going to go ahead of Wallstat.
That's good kudos to him, man. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, the fact that he's still on the board here at 20. The Oilers are officially on the clock, and Wallstat is available. The goaltender here, they got to take him. Take him.
Who would they take? I don't think they're going to take Logan Stankoven because they already have Yamamoto, and God forbid you have 2 guys under 6 feet on the same team. I don't think they're going to take Lysell because he's also a smaller side, speedy winger. That doesn't seem like Edmonton's MO.
Well, they've got a bunch of them.
It's got to be Wallstat.
Do they recoup a D? Do they go Carson Lambos or Corson Ceulemans? Corson Ceulemans played in the AJHL, so he should be familiar to them.
Yeah, true. I don't know.
Cool. That would be the funniest outcome is if they took Carson Ceulemans because that guy could be any number of things. And there's the hurricane tracking paths where it's got the big wide net and then the one red line through the middle. That's Carson Ceulemans. He could be literally anything at this point. That I kind of want them to do that. I don't harbor ill will towards Edmonton for the most part, but it's too funny. We're through the looking glass at this point. It's gotta happen.
At this point, it's just do the most hilarious thing.
Yeah. This has been a hilarious draft, right? Beef at 3, KJ going 5, Casa, Boucher. This has been a great draft.
Yeah, there's been a lot of off the board picks, which I mean, we could have expected this realistically. It's been a weird year with COVID and, not being able to see a lot of these players, and the OHL didn't play at all. I know a lot of these kids ended up going over and playing in Europe to get a little bit of a view, I suppose. But in terms of it being a regular draft, I think that was out the window just based on how the season went. And I think it was just going to be wild, just like everything has been the last year and a half.
Yeah. One of those OHL guys that didn't go across was Wyatt Johnson, who plays center, and I bet you he goes in the next 11 picks, 12.
You think
12.
He'll
How many
go
teams
early?
are in this league? I don't know. He's just the guy that everybody loves, like the OHL guy that didn't play anywhere.
Well, there's 32 now with the. Yeah.
Are they making the pick?
I don't know. There's a minute left. I don't understand. You're running to and like putting this pick in. Like you're running in and clocking in and you're taking Wallstat. I don't understand why they're letting this thing tick down.
Well, you got to debate all options, you know?
No, there's one option.
Their draft board is in chaos right now. They weren't expecting this. Maybe they didn't rank Wallstat. Now they're doing last minute research.
Maybe they're doing that
Exactly
situation. You remember the video that the Flyers released where they were talking about like when they drafted Sam Morin and originally they had him ranked like 30th or something, and then over the course of like their discussion heading into well, why don't we just move him up a bit? And up a bit, and up a bit.
It's looking like we got a trade here. This would be why they didn't run and put the clock.
Oh no, did they trade down?
They're trading down. It looks like, according to Michael Russo, the Minnesota Wild are moving up, and the likely pick is going to be Wallstat.
Wow, I guess they don't believe in Kakkonen at all.
No, that you could. I mean, they didn't even protect him in the expansion draft. Of course, they don't believe in him.
That's
well,
a tough
when
look
your
for Bill
only
Guerin.
goaltender that you can rely on is a 39-year-old Mike Smith, you don't need to worry about prospects.
Oh, for Edmonton's sake. Yeah, no kidding. Well, Minnesota has Cam Talbot. He'll stay good forever. Am I right?
So they get a third-round pick to move back 2 spots.
I can't wait to check Oilers Twitter.
What is this? Okay.
That's good work for the Oilers.
We've got Seth Topal from Locked On Wild here. Let's bring him in to chat about this. Seth, what's going on, buddy? Hearing that your boys now on the clock, the Minnesota Wild, is this where we finally see the goaltender go?
Honestly, I got to roll with Russo, and this is a surprise to me. I figured that the Wild would try to add some depth to their center cabinet, but if this is Wallstead that's picked, this tells me that the Wild are not fully set on Kaapo Kähkönen necessarily as being like the guy going forward.
Now, I had you on my podcast recently, and you were telling me that his split stats were god-awful against above 500 teams. And then when I saw that they didn't even protect him in the expansion draft, those two things together tell me that they are not sold on Kaapo Kähkö. And moving up to get the goalie is clearly the right decision here for the Minnesota Wild.
I think so. I mean, this is the benefit of having 2 picks in the first round, and it cost them a third-round pick to move up a couple of spots. That's a no-brainer for Bill Guerin. And so, yeah, it would have been nice to maybe try to get one of the centers still left on the board, but at the same time, this is a classic. We're just going to get, best player available. And we're going to just put him into our system, and he's probably going to end up being the one that takes over for Cam Talbot once his contract is up.
Wallstead, in theory, could play next year, so it's that's a good. When are the Wild's next pick?
26 after this.
There should be some centers still there, like Pinelli or Pastyov, one of those guys. So yeah, they can still get it. They can still get their center.
I've been wowed, especially last year with what Judd Brackett and Bill Guerin were able to do, getting Marco Rossi, who was expected to be like within the top 5, and ended up falling to 9. That was a home run pick, and
Marco Rossi is unbelievable.
I can't wait until he is up with the big club, and hopefully it'll be sooner than later. I would be shocked if it's not at least at some point next year.
I had a question for you. Have you come to the realization of whether or not those moves made the other day is a win now move or a waiting 5 years to win move, a long-term play? And maybe does this trade up to get a goalie play into that at all? It's
so fascinating still to try to figure out what the ulterior motives were for the buyouts. Honestly, I think a majority of it was just wanting to be done with having to deal with these contracts and not having to worry about the salary cap recapture popping up at an inopportune time where maybe the Wilds get to where they feel like they are one or two players away. And let's say then Ryan Suter or Zach Parise were to retire and they get hit with that, and then they can't do anything to kind of close that gap. So I think it just came down to Bill Guerin saying, okay, we know what the penalties are going to be if we buy out Suter and Parise right now. They won't change. It's just something that we're going to have to deal with. And some of that is, I think, him just wanting to really continue to push what he's building here. And the addition by subtraction, I don't know. It's all, I'm still trying to, even at this point, kind of wrap my head around it, because it segments into two parts. Like these next 2 years, we have a little bit of cap relief. 2 years after that, where there is none, you've got $15 million just sitting on the books. And then it completely opens up, with the exception of the $800K for each of those guys. It opens up after that to where, okay, this is our window. So there's going to be, I think there's going to be a little bit of a, let's see if we can go for it this year. See if we can really, compete with the Central Division. After that, if they don't, then they probably will go to a little bit of a kind of rebuild on the fly over the next 3 years. Then after that, then they're right back in it.
They still in on Eichel, you think?
Boy, when I hopped on with you guys and was just so in on it, that turned very quickly when I heard that the medical records haven't been released. And honestly, that really scares me. Like, you would think if it was something that really wasn't that big of a deal, that they'd be giving him to the Rangers and the Wild to try to get a deal done. But it's not something that I'm really comfortable with anymore.
So Wallstat is officially the pick here for the Minnesota Wild.
Great choice.
It's absolute steal. Somebody who most people had ranked inside their top 10 overall, and
Tony had him too.
Tony had him high, like really high in his. He loves Wallstat, thinks he's going to be a stud. So Minnesota getting themselves a real quality netminder. The Wild are building something there. They're building something.
Yeah, and it's, they've got all these high picks, and with the buyouts, they're going to get opportunities. Those guys are going to get opportunities to play and see if they can be part of a core going forward. So
do they after, like, they've got some building blocks. So they have Rossi, Wallstedt now, Kalen Addison, and
Boldy.
Kaprizov, and then Boldy. Who else is there? Because they're going to have to keep building up, because playing with a $65 million cap where everybody else is playing with 81 is going to be tough. Who's the next guy? Who are the next guys after Boldy? Because I think he's pushed down the list now, right?
Yeah, so they've got they've got a couple of other prospects in the pipeline. Merritt Huston-Dinoff, who expects to be, a really good piece for them a couple more years down the line. And beyond that, I mean, they have a bunch of just depth guys that could be quality pieces for a team. And Philip Johansson, name that I think a lot of people may remember from I don't even know how many years ago, is apparently kind of working his way back through the system. He could be a guy on defense maybe at some point. So they have just this slew of guys under those top level players that are really solid, that could come in and kind of be that back end depth for the team. And they're probably going to have to be 2 years from now.
Man. Sounds like Elliot Friedman is saying that Jack Eichel is not going to get moved anytime soon because the Sabres asking price is just too high for what teams are willing to pay.
Yeah,
that would make the Ron Francis.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, it seemed like basically he's asking for 4 first-round picks, but they're also not willing to let the medical records go, and that's what I think is really weird about this whole thing. I wouldn't, like you said, Seth, I wouldn't pull the trigger either if I can't see those medical records, I mean, if this is as bad of a neck injury as is being reported, where, he wants to get some sort of surgery that hasn't been done before, that is like somewhat experimental. I mean, I would not feel comfortable giving up the massive haul that he's asking for without knowing all that information.
Well, and here's the other thing too, is I saw reported that the price potentially for Sam Reinhart could be a player and a pick. So maybe that's fair. Something that they get way more comfortable with doing now that the Eichel talks have kind of hit a little bit of a snag. And then, you've got other names. You've got Christian Dvorak, who is available. Tomas Hertl has been another one that I've heard the Wild too.
No, not a chance. maybe at the deadline. Actually, who is available is apparently Timo Meier.
But the Wild got some stuff going on the wings. They need some guys down the middle. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I was speaking on the national show on Tuesdays. I do with Locked On Sabres host, and we were going back and forth, me and Joe, and he is actually coming around to the idea that Eichel might not be going anywhere. And he was telling me that on Tuesday. So it sounds like within the Buffalo area, it's starting to sound more and more like he's going to be returning. So,
I mean, they're getting Jack Eichel.
Well, yeah,
keeping Jack Eichel is a great plan B.
Yes, it is if he wants to be there. Because if he doesn't and he becomes a cancer in the locker room, I don't know. We'll see how that ends up playing out, I guess. But 20 seconds left on the clock for the Bruins.
I think we spent a lot of time on Buffalo. Commensurate to their win record.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in an interesting situation, right? Because they've got so much turnover in management over the last few years, and then now they brought in Sam Ventura. They might actually be making some smart moves. I mean, it sounds like you like their draft so far, Kyle. So maybe the Buffalo Sabres will surprise us a little bit. Probably not in the division that they're in. I think it's going to be almost impossible for them to get anywhere in the next year or two, but maybe they'll move somewhere well. You never know.
What's going on with Boston here? They're taking us down to the wire. So Boston, the last couple of years, has gone way off the board and taken randos like John Beecher and
they just made their pick.
I bet you it's a defenseman. I bet you it's Corson Kuhlmans or Carson Lambos.
No, it is not. Hold on.
Oh,
freaking the pick now. Fabian Lysell.
That's a good pick.
He doesn't look pleased. Okay, there we go.
He was on a I said that he didn't have red flags. There's some stuff on Twitter you can read about. There's some massive D&D stuff with him. So I don't know what that is, but not great. But he's high skill, super, super high skill.
This kid, he's the fastest player in the draft, right?
Yeah.
Like probably. This guy's got wheels. Yeah, just watching now. He's doing playing for the under 18, showing some footage here, and this guy's just zooming past kids.
He's so fast. Like, you want a guy that plays fast? This is the guy that plays fast. He gets the puck and he is gone.
So that's going to be interesting to put him on the Boston Bruins. It's kind of an element that they don't necessarily have, I would say, is like a super, super fast guy. I mean, they've got some speed, but
they don't have anybody like this.
No, that's what I mean. They don't have anyone who's got that extra gear like Lysell. So I think that's a good pick. And he was probably the best player available at this point on the board. So not only do they go best player available, I think they have needs at forward. So getting a guy like this, I think that's a pretty good pick for the Boston Bruins.
Look at him carve up these defensemen.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, he's just zooming past kids.
He didn't have a great under 18. Which I think kind of knocked him down, but he's fast. We're back to Edmonton already. Great.
Man, what is Edmonton going to do? I love that we said can't screw this up,
and they did.
Okay, I immediately take that back.
Who's left out there? Like best player available? I mean, Atu Radi is still out there. Carson Lambos.
Well, it's going around on Oilers Twitter that Ken Holland had let it be known that they were very focused on taking a forward in this draft.
Okay,
so Rati.
Well, they can't take Ratu because if they did what they did to Puljujärvi, where they didn't get him a translator, they brought him over, kicked him back. That's the exact same thing Ratu is going to need. I mean, they'll take him, but like they're taking him forward.
Now they'll have Puljujärvi there, though, to at least they'll have like another Finnish guy with them. Although he could just be saying in Finn, like, hey, get out of here. This organization sucks. We're never going to win.
Who else would be there? Francesco Pinelli, center, played in the Slovenian league this year. Super smart. Not the fastest guy, but he's going to be like really intelligent with how he picks apart defenses. Stankoven, but he's 5'8".
Yeah, Xavier Bourgault could potentially be an option here. Played in the Q last year.
Zach Leroux.
Yeah.
Leroux was my first pick in the Locked On mock, so I am 0 for 1.
To be fair, they traded.
Who's counting? Yeah, who's counting?
Leroux wouldn't be. Is it Leroux or Bourgault that has all the suspensions? I get them confused, and I covered them so long ago. One of them gets suspended a lot.
I think it was Leroux.
Yeah. So maybe not. I mean, he's really skilled. His problem is that he just keeps getting suspended.
Yeah, because when we talked about him on Locked On, in reacting to the mock, Gabe Foley, who I had on to discuss it, was like, well, he's got some character concerns, but I think maybe he's starting to kind of work through those. And I'm like, yikes.
Yeah, I think a couple of the suspensions were stick work. One of them was a shot to the head. He's that kind of guy who plays like right on the edge. I'm wondering who Edmonton.
I mean, there's a few. Here's what I'm looking like. I'm looking at the board at this point, and like once you get to like 20, I mean 20 through 40 it's all basically the same. Like it's just whoever your guy is. I don't think there's you can go a little bit off the board and get a guy who's maybe ranked as like 33rd, and that's your top guy on your board. That could very well be the case.
Yeah, but Ryan Rizog from TSN is saying that the Oilers are likely taking Bourgault.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bourgault, yeah. That makes sense. I think
that's literally right where he was mocked, probably.
Yeah, like Bourgault makes a lot of sense. Like good player. I think he's also, as of now, let me see. I think he might be the top ranked player available on NHL.com's scouting list.
But like you were saying to the guys that are like 20 to 40, like Mackie Samoskevich is probably ranked like 34 or something like that. Some team could easily take him at 23 or 24 and have a lights out player, but the difference between him and Sasha Pastyov is nothing or Bourgault because he just got taken. There's some decent guys that you can take high upside swings on still left on this board.
I've got an interesting tidbit in regards to Jesper Wallstad's pick by the Wild. According to Judd Zulgad, this is the first time, at least from what he can tell, in North Stars and Wild history that a Minnesota team has taken a goalie in the first round.
Yeah.
There you go.
Stands to reason, unless Manny Fernandez was picked in round 1.
And they went up and they got it. Yeah, so the Oilers pick is in, and yeah, it is in fact Xavier Bourgault. So 40 points in 29 games with Shawinigan this year, though. So he's got a little bit of offense to him.
He played on a line with Maverick Bourque, I think. Really helped him as well.
Yeah.
Who got picked last year? to Dallas.
Somebody's coming for you.
All right, let's see who's on the board.
I live between the hospital and the fire station. It's very annoying, and on like one of the busiest streets in Vancouver. It's quite frustrating.
So now we got the Dallas Stars on the clock.
Who traded down with Detroit, right?
Dallas, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is where they traded down. Detroit took Casa. So let's see what they end up giving up.
They're aging, right? Like they need everything at this point.
This could be like a Pinelli or a Ratu type of spot here. I could see that. I mean, their defense is pretty stacked at this point, although it looks like they may end up losing John Klingberg next year. Rumors are that they're not willing to pay him the type of money he's going to be expecting, so he may end up getting dealt this summer, and if that's the case, maybe they take a defenseman. But their defense is pretty stacked at this point. I think they've built up a pretty good blue line. They could go anywhere. Like, I mean,
I'm watching these Bourgault highlights. They're not exactly thrilling.
That's bad when they're throwing out the highlights and it's just like all hits.
One of his highlights was a 3-on-0 and he just like tapped it in. I was like, oh, interesting. That's not what you want to see, but hey.
Hey, I mean, if Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner can get a 2-on-0 and miss the net, at least he put it in the net, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Dallas is gonna. Florida's an interesting selection right after it. Florida will be fun.
Florida's kind of got like a wealth of at most positions right now. They seem to be built pretty well.
If Ratu's there at Florida, they're
definitely taking him.
Like that's the pick.
Yeah, because they have Barkov, they have Heponiemi. I think they have Lou Osterainen or whatever. Yeah. They have so many Swedish
forward. Every single Swedish forward. Sorry, Finnish. Yes, Finnish forward. Is what I meant.
Disrespect to Finland here.
Yeah,
a proud nation.
Hey man, I'm a massive Barkov fan.
Barkov is so much fun. His contract's due up in like a year. That'll be fun to see what happens there.
That's Florida. When Guerin makes the trade. That's the big one that the Wild will do.
Oh, Barkov? That'd be something. If they can't pay him,
I can dream, can I?
Yeah.
That's you know what it is. It's when they can't afford Barkov and Huberdeau goes home to Quebec and stars for Montreal for 3 or 4 years.
God,
fulfilling the Vincent Lecavalier dream from like 20 years ago.
Getting a Florida Quebec star to come back. I don't know. I just can't see the Canadians actually pulling that off.
Well, we don't know what Scott Mellanby's going to be like as a GM. Who knows? Maybe he's super bold.
Yeah, and you never know because you know what? I'm actually hearing more and more rumblings that Marc Bergevin is not necessarily stepping down to move away from the organization, but considering taking a more
presidential role.
Yeah, a presidential role. Because like you look at Marc Bergevin, look at what he looked like when he took over that job. And what he looks like now. And it's like whenever you look at like the president of the United States in the first year of office versus like 8 years later, and they actually aged 20 years, it's like that. But it's the GM of the Montreal Canadiens. Like it has been hard on him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's ready to move on. Oh yeah, he is jacked. That's for sure.
Like he's still. Here's the thing though. He just needs to cut his hair, which now he's.
He looks so good with his little man bun in the presser.
But I mean, that's why he looks like he's so ragged, just because of the hair, right? But I mean, all he has to do is get a cut, and that guy looks probably like the hottest 55-year-old man in the world.
Yeah, fair. San Jose is still trying to trade into the first round, which I don't know. That scares me because how do you get into the first round without giving up something good? And they better not be giving away their 2022, 2023 lottery tickets. So
the pick is Wyatt Johnston.
There's my boy.
Your boy Johnston getting picked here in the first round by the Dallas Stars at 23. So they move back from 15 to 23. They pick up a second round pick and a 5th round pick, and they take Wyatt Johnston at 23.
If Minnesota can hold out and get Aatu Ratu at 26, that's Minnesota's cooking.
And you mentioned too about San Jose potentially trying to trade into the first. I think it was Russo that tweeted it earlier this week and said that, the Wild wouldn't be opposed to hopping out with one of their picks, depending on what the haul they get back is. So maybe if they have a guy that's there that they think they can get.
If it's Aatu Ratu, I'm going to be deceased. But Wyatt Johnson, that's fun. I know nothing about him. He didn't play last year. He literally didn't play except for at the under 18s.
He was one of the ones that was listed as a huge wild card, right? Where like some teams had him in the top 20 and some had him in like the third round.
Oh,
so
yeah, he really rose up quickly in the past like 2-ish weeks. All of a sudden, the Wyatt Johnson train left the station. So
it's always funny how that happens with certain prospects. Hey, like there's no games being played, and all of a sudden, it's just like one or two guys just rocket up the rankings, and you're like, what have you been doing all year that all of a sudden right now is when everything changes for you?
It's like, this is for Sean. It's like when Jean-Leon worked out against the chair and went like top 5 that year in the NBA draft. It's the same thing, just out of nowhere. These guys are just like firing up the boards. Like, what are you basing this on? He didn't do anything. Like, no knock against him, but he didn't play.
No, I think they probably just liked what they saw out of him when he was playing in Windsor the year before, I guess, right? You just assume, that's so. Good. Right? Like, it's good. I think this year's such a wild card, man. Like, it's just so bizarre, seeing it really started at 3, right? Where we saw McTavish go a little bit earlier than I think we anticipated. Kent Johnson went, Eklund falls all the way to 7, your boy. And then, the goalie ends up dropping pretty far down. And now we've got Johnson moving up. Like, the Sens went way off board at number 10. Lots of weird.
Well, this year's going to be good for teams like Detroit or San Jose who have really strong scouting departments.
Absolutely.
Or Toronto, because Toronto has all the money in the world, right? And they've been really good.
Late in the drafts, especially, I think you're gonna get some real studs. And I'm gonna have if we can get Tony Ferrari on back afterwards. He was talking about a second round prospect who he felt had first round talent, but one of the biggest.
Really Koivunen?
No, it wasn't. Let me see if I can remember if his name ends up poking out to me. But anyways, he was a prospect who I guess I think he was a centerman. No,
I think he said as a play driving winger.
Maybe Ayrton Martino.
Ayrton Martino is electric.
Yeah, so I think Martino's the guy who was thinking about, if I'm not mistaken, and he was saying like, yeah, this guy, based on the system that they played in Omaha, he was asked to do things a little differently from the wing position, which actually made him look worse than he is in his defensive zone coverage. But he's also like a really good penalty killer. So I guess he had him one-on-one and he was having a conversation with him and he was like, why is it that like you're trusted upon as like a penalty killer, but I mean, somewhat struggle in defensive coverage? He's like, well, that's kind of the system that we play where we're supposed to be doing this and that, blah, blah, blah. And basically I just thought it was like a really good story about how like chatting with prospects and figuring out why they have like the, what would be considered knocks on them and figuring out what those knocks are and why they think the way they do. And if it's systematic as opposed to just, their brain can't function in a proper way to play the sport, then it's something where if you have those conversations and, you're scouting really heavily, it's something where you could say, okay, we can work with that. If we put him in this system, we can turn him into a pretty solid player. And I think, if you have a strong enough scouting staff, you should be able to find those diamonds in the rough if they've been out there doing those conversations and putting in the grunt work. And hopefully enough, NHL scouts were out there in a year where the pandemic was going on and they can find some diamonds in the rough later in the draft.
Yeah, bring it back to Wyatt Johnson a little bit. It seems like from Rhys Jessup, who used to work for the Florida Panthers, he was talking about why people like his game, and it seems to come down to his creativity in this like small area spaces. So he doesn't have much physicality in his game, but Rhys thinks that his small space, like his domination over small spaces, will translate really well to the fast-paced game of the NHL.
Nice. That's exactly what Mikey was just talking about right there. That's the kind of pick that you dig the dirt away and figure it out and figure out if it was a system or whatever. And it's similar to like Brant Clark in Slovakia. Yeah, his passes weren't connecting because he's playing with 40-year-old dudes who are hacking a pack of darts at intermission, right? It's the Slovakian league. Yeah, they're just not going to be as good as his teammates. So I think a team like Toronto, especially, who's found your Topi Niemilas and your I don't want to say Rodion Amirov. Who's the other guy they took from Finland?
Roni Hirvonen.
Roni Hirvonen. If they can do that again this draft and have a leg up on somebody like Buffalo, who had no scouts, or a team who traditionally hasn't fared well after round one. So there's people to be had, like Eric Martino. He's really good.
Yeah, and he's not expected to go in the first round anywhere. Expected to go mid to late second round ish. I think I even saw one. I think Pronman had him ranked at 75, so that would even be into the third round potentially. And this is a guy who Tony, a well respected scout that I really lean on for, and think that he's really what he does. He thinks this kid can develop into a first rounder because those knocks that he hit that scouting community has on him, there's reason for it. And if you could fish out the reason and figure it out and put him in a position that makes him excel to kind of rid those knocks, he's got first round talent all over him. So, Martino is a guy who I'm going to be kind of keeping an eye on here as the rest of round one and day two approaches, and someone's going to get a good player.
Yep. Sam Oskevich is another guy from the USHL.
Yeah. Can we talk about how it seemed like the middle part of this draft really zoomed by, and the last 5 picks have been
they're so
extremely slow. What is going on here?
What was it? Almost an hour and 15 minutes in for the first 6 picks.
Yeah, and then it zoomed right through for the next 10, and then the last 5, 6. Holy crap!
It's got to be contemplating trades, right? Like a bunch of GMs sitting there thinking, should we move up, move down, and not
lots of conversations,
being willing to pull the trigger.
Florida's pick has been in for almost a full 2 minutes now, but we have to watch whoever Winnipeg picked talk. Do it well. Do it while the clock is ticking down from the 5 minutes, not
right
holding up picks.
Totally agree. I don't know why they're doing that. I guess they do it every year, but so your boy Sam Oskevich going here at 24 to the Florida Panthers.
That's a pick. That's
Chicago Steel boy.
Wait till you see this highlight package. It's not going to be Bourgo. Yeah, this is a guy I was hoping San Jose would trade back into the top of the second and grab. They're swinging for offensive upside and putting guys who are going to succeed offensively onto your team. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking guys who score goals or taking guys who create offense. It's the floor and the ceiling might have a bigger gap between them, but I don't think you should be going for the ceiling. You shouldn't be going for the floor most of the time. So,
and here's another kid that's committed to Michigan. So
he's committed to Michigan?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Martino that's committed to the weird one. Martino's going to Clarkson University.
Yeah. Sam Oskevich is going to Michigan. So, that team's going to be unreal. I think this is the 5th Michigan player, Michigan commit / player that's been taken in the first round so far.
And they're bringing back Bordelot to add to that team. And there's somebody else too that plays defense. That team's mental.
Oh yeah. If they didn't have COVID issues at the end of the season, they very well could have won the Frozen Four.
Oh yeah. Yeah, look at this highlight pack. This is just why is this guy not going 15? That's the thing. These are the kind of guys.
Let's answer this question that we have here in the chat. I think Sean put this question out there for the chat. Let's answer it so far because we're 24 picks in with Columbus still on the clock at pick 25. But so far through the first 24 picks, what's been the best and worst picks so far? I guess we could start off with you, Andrew, if you quickly want to go through your best and worst pick, and then we can move down the board.
I mean, it's got to be the best has got to be Jesper Wallstedt, right? Because just where he was ranked versus where he was picked, and Minnesota just calling their shot and moving up to take him, and taking him from Edmonton, which is the craziest part, who desperately needs somebody of that caliber in net. It's hilarious. And worst pick, man, I don't know. I think just based on the way he's described, I feel like Tyler Boucher is a second-round pick.
Yeah.
To be taken top 10 is crazy. Like, he might be a really, really good player, but top 10 seems nuts to me.
I'm with you on that. I got Boucher as my reach. Definitely the worst pick so far. Eklund at 7. Like I still think that is an absolute steal. Yeah. Like he could be one of the best players to come out of this draft. Like 5 years from now, we could be saying like William Eklund, how did he slip? Kind of the way that we talk about Elias Pettersson and Cale Makar slipping to 4 and 5 in that draft. I think Eklund could be that player at 7. And Kyle, I know you got to be pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, I think Eklund's the best choice just because you don't often get the best player in the draft at 7. I do think Wallstedt at 20, wherever he was picked by Minnesota, is a great one, but I think Eklund might impact the game sooner. Eklund's my best choice. The worst choice, it's going to be a consensus, right? It's Tyler Boucher at 10. Yeah. It's just too much. That's too much of a reach, considering where he was.
It's one of those picks where, like, even if it works out and he ends up being pretty decent, it's still not really that defensible, you know. Like, I've seen people compare him to
baby
Tom Wilson. If he's Tom Wilson, like, that's still not great. Like,
no, and he's gonna have to, like, to hit his ceiling. He's gonna have a lot harder time to project up to the top, rather than some of these skill guys who are gonna fall in.
Well, and that's the thing with Ottawa, right? Is they seem to be going for a lot of these gritty guys in drafts, aside from Stützle. So, like, who else other than Stützle is going to do the goal scoring? Brady Tkachuk has a lot of talent. He's a high danger chance machine, but so far in the NHL, his finishing talent has been not that great based on the shots that he's taking. So, like, is he going to fulfill his expected goals at some point? Maybe. But I think Ottawa needs some more high-end talent to build that team around. They can't just be a bunch of gritty two-way guys.
Yeah, they could definitely use some more high-level finishers, but like as of now, I take a look. I mean, Drake Batherson had a really good season with them. Josh Norris, his first season in the NHL was a really productive one. If he can continue to progress, I like it. Shane Pinto, I thought, had a really good final couple of weeks after coming up to the NHL squad. I like what they're doing out in Ottawa, but I agree they need maybe one more like high-level impact finisher to go along with Stützle and a Tkachuk. And I mean, ideally you would have that guy maybe even be a centerman, because that's what they need desperately is some more talent down the middle.
Yeah. Next year's Ottawa, hopefully Ottawa's not in the place where they play themselves out of a really good draft and fall into purgatory.
They could though, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not bad. Like even this year they were somewhat competitive for a lot of these games. And if they, their rookies and young guys take a step and they can get the consistent goaltending that they never got this year. Plus now they're playing Detroit and Buffalo, 6 times a year.
But they're also playing Tampa and
right. But they were losing games anyways, right? Like they were losing games regardless. Right. So, I mean, it's going to be, interesting to see what ends up happening to them. That's for sure. Look who got this pick in from Columbus. Their third pick in the draft in the first round. Yeah, well, they picked up an extra one, obviously, in the Seth Jones deal, and now they get their third pick. So who they get? They got Kent Johnson with number 5, and then they took Cole Sillinger at number 12, and then with the 25th pick, they're announcing it as we speak.
That Igor Chinnikov pick from last year, boy howdy.
Yeah, a defenseman would make sense here. Maybe this is where we could see like a Carson Lambos come off the board, perhaps.
Aatu Ratu is finished, and so is Jarmo Kekalainen.
And it's Carson Kuhlman. So they do go defenseman, but they go the alternate routes and go with Carson Kuhlman's 6'2", 200-pound right shot defenseman. This is a pretty good one. I mean, they went forward. I thought defense made a lot of sense for them with their third pick here in the first round.
It looks like a really strong draft for Columbus so far.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you can get 3 first-round picks and actually make bank on all of them, that's pretty impressive. Shout out to the Boston Bruins for not doing that.
Jarmo Kekalainen, nice. Jarmo Kekalainen doesn't get nearly enough credit as being one of the best general managers in the NHL. Like, this guy rarely loses. Like,
he's had a good day. Today has been a good day.
He's had a good career.
Very good day for Jarmo, for sure.
Look at everything that he's done since he became the general manager. I mean, his first draft was back when he took where he left Puljujarvi off the right, and then ended up going with Pierre-Luc Dubois, which seemed extremely off the board at the time. But judging how those careers have gone, that was a right pick. Now, obviously, things went south this year with Dubois, but they ended up picking up Patrick Laine out of it. We'll see. Hopefully that turns out to be all right too. But as a talent evaluator, like, this guy knows what he's talking about because he's hit on a lot of picks.
I think they just got to stop people from leaving. I think Arpon Basu of The Athletic asked today, why does everybody leave Columbus? And I think that's kind of fair because everybody has left. There's nobody has stayed and made their career other than like Rick Nash. And even then he left decently, like at the end of his prime, but he still left.
Yeah. And
they haven't been able to retain the high-end talent, that's for sure.
So Carson Kuhlman's, interestingly, was the kid who played in the AJHL. So
could be anything.
Those AJ kids get picked in the first round.
Yeah, not very often. And Major Junior is always like, you're not 100%. Well, you're never 100% sure in the draft, but you're less sure what you're actually getting, right? Because the competition level is significantly lower. A lot of defensive deficiencies are not going to be as obvious because they're not going to be challenged the same way. So there's definitely a little bit of risk in that pick. But at this stage, I kind of like going that route. I think Columbus is having a pretty strong draft here, but considering we're probably going to wait a while again for the next
Minnesota's
pick,
right here.
They're right there, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Congrats to Billy Guerin.
Carson Lambos is the pick for the Minnesota Wild. Seth, you have the floor.
Wow. So they go defenseman. Honestly, not surprised because of what has happened so far this offseason. Ryan Suter's gone. Carson Soucy is gone. Ian Cole potentially is also gone. And I'm not suggesting that Lambos is going to help this year, but that cupboard's starting to get a little thin at defense. I mean, you got Kalen Addison, who will be able to fill one of those spots with the Wild right now. But beyond that, I think Philip Johansson might be the next best like defensive prospect that the Wild have in their system. So
Lambos is an all offense guy from the defense. I don't know how that fits in with Kalen Addison, but Lambos is the offensive defenseman there for you.
I like it because Addison has a little bit more of that as well. But honestly, I'm fine with loading up on guys that can contribute on the offensive end, considering basically the entire Wild's history has been like grit and grind out a 2-1 win. I don't mind seeing a 6-5 win every night. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, good two-way kid. Just quickly read off the scouting report from NHL.com. Lambos is a two-way defenseman who has showcased good patience in the defensive zone and in transition. Played 2 WHL games before sustaining a lower body injury. The 18-year-old scored 11 points with 2 goals, 9 assists in 13 games on loan in Finland in the junior league this year. Last season, he led all WHL rookie defensemen with 32 points through 57 games. So that's the kid that you guys got for the Wild.
Yeah, Megan Chayka had a scouting report as well based on Stathlete numbers. She said NHL player comparables in terms of style of play: Seth Jones and Jacob Trouba. Consistently in good position defending, defends the middle of the ice well. Puck possession player, influences the pace of play with good decision making and puck control, and good skating ability off the rush.
So you're telling me it's possible for 18-year-old NHL defensemen to be compared to players not named Victor Hedman? Weird.
That was my favorite thing, that there was 2 Victor Hedmans in this draft, and a historically weak draft. I was like,
yeah, amazing, right?
Come on, guys. That's a nice pick for Minnesota. Carson Lambos is a good pick at 26.
Yeah,
I'm very happy with that first round. And again, kudos to Judd Brackett. That was an unbelievable move by Bill Guerin to bring him in to handle the draft.
Shout out Jim Ben.
Yeah, like, Judd Brackett.
Look at what he's done.
He's unbelievable. Like the Canucks are so dumb for letting him go and essentially keeping JB over Judzy. That was such a bad move for them. Absolute atrocity. And then you saw what happened today. And I don't think Judd would have made that move.
No.
No.
There's no. Oh, I love when the parents are happy, or the brother, like Jack Hughes. This dad is Mr. Lambos is pumped right now.
That's always like the best part of the draft, unless there's like a crazy trade, right? Oh, if we're waiting for another pick, let's get into a random question here. What's your favorite draft moment of all time? I'm gonna go first. When the Minnesota Wild acquired Pavel Demitra, and Gary Bettman was announcing it, and the whole crowd, they didn't like clap or cheer. They just went, "Ooh!" It was like unanimous, the whole arena.
Oh man, that's yeah. I'm gonna just choose to forget that one, but stuff works out sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't.
I'm going to go with, favorite.
They're not going to qualify this person anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I was in Buffalo for the Matthews draft, so that was pretty sick to be there live and kind of watch all that unfold. And I even went back for day 2, which is pretty cool because at the time I was like 19, 20 years old, and just thought it was like super cool that I was at the draft. And by day 2, it's actually like barren. There's nobody there. So I'm just sitting like third row right off the draft floor. And in behind me is a bunch of GMs and a bunch of agents just like talking. So like Joe Sakic comes and just like walks right past me. And, Chayka walks right past me. And it was just like such a cool experience. I had like Fried right in front of me and they're breaking trades. And I remember at the end of the draft, I saw Lou Lamoriello and Jarmo Kekalainen chatting, and I was like, oh, there's a trade going down between the Leafs and Columbus. And then it came down that was the Kirby Reichel and Scott Harrington trade. So it was not nearly as big as I thought. I think at the time it was like Sonny Milano was rumored to be going to Toronto. So I thought maybe that was the Sonny Milano deal that was going to happen. And that was before he kind of didn't turn into anything. But really, really, that would probably be my best memory, just being there live and watching it all go down. It's kind of cool.
I've never been to a draft.
Me neither.
I'm going to Montreal next year, though. That's for sure.
Ooh. Nice.
Very nice. All right, we got to say thanks to Seth for joining us here. Everybody check out Locked On Wild. Thanks so much for coming here, Seth.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys. I'll have a reaction to both picks in Locked On Now form coming up shortly.
All right, Kyle's going to stick around, and we're going to bring on Robin Liano of Locked On Canucks.
Coyotes.
Coyotes. I just saw OEL, and I was like, Canucks. But no, getting rid of OEL.
That infiltrated your brain very, very quickly.
Yeah, I know. We've just been talking about Benning all day,
Yeah, it's a Locked On Now of his version from the Arizona side of the OEL and Canucks deal. So Robin Liano of Locked On Coyotes.
Robin Liano with Locked On Coyotes. Major news coming out of the Coyotes organization. They have made a trade. A big trade ahead of tonight's draft. This trade to the Vancouver Canucks is Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland. Coming to Arizona, we have Anton Roussel, Louis Eriksson, and Jay Beagle, as well as Vancouver's 9th overall draft pick. Vancouver also will be sending over a 2nd round pick in next year's draft, as well as a 7th round pick. Arizona will be retaining 12% of Connor Garland's salary, which is obviously would make sense. A little bit of a salary retention of a player that's already commanding an $8.2 million cap hit. Major deal for the Arizona Coyotes of a rebuilding team. We knew this was eventually going to come. It was talked about for ages and ages because the Coyotes focusing on a rebuild. And Bill Armstrong, he's talked about focusing on getting more draft picks after last week getting rid of Aiden Hill for draft picks, as well as acquiring Andrew Ladd with draft picks, and just the other day with Shane Gostisbehere in draft picks. Here's the same situation. They had to figure out a way to get back into the first round, and they did that by getting rid of their captain and a future star in Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland. It had to be done for a team that's focusing on a rebuild. And again, no surprise, because after the Gostisbehere trade just the other day, Bill Armstrong said he wasn't done before the draft. And this is the trade made before the draft. Again, Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland to Vancouver. Coming back is a 9th overall, a 2nd round, a 7th round, Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, and Anton Roussel. Major news, big deal for the Arizona Coyotes. Well done, Bill Armstrong. Be sure to check out all of the analysis of the deal, as well as what Arizona could be very well doing for this 9th overall pick. Just follow us at LO_Coyotes at the Locked On Coyotes podcast, found wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks to Robin for breaking down a pretty busy day for the Coyotes. She did a great job there. I am pretty impressed with the haul that the Coyotes took in just absorbing some cap space and moving Ekman-Larsson. I didn't think there was such a huge market for him with the way that his game has dropped. But at the same time, I'm looking at the Coyotes and I'm like, when are they going to stop being the team that takes on dead cap space for people? Are they ever going to be very harsh, a real NHL team, and they're not just like having Marian Hosas and Chris Prongers on there? They're everybody else's pantry, right? They're just take this stuff that we don't want. We'll give you some stuff for your future, but the future never actually comes. And I hope that we get to a point where the Coyotes are actually competitive. I think a lot of people thought that last year they were, not this last season, but 2019-20, they were getting close to there, but the underlying numbers were never really there. And they had a little hot streak that they brought in Taylor Hall for and just didn't work.
Like Darcy Kemper's injury also didn't help, right? Because he was playing lights out up until then, and I'll be curious to see if they decide to hold on to him. Like, it seems like anybody who's making more than league minimum is gone. I thought I heard Elliot Friedman talking about how their cap is legitimately at the bottom, like 67 million is the cap minimum, I believe, and like that's what their internal cap is, yet the internal payroll must be 50 million. So I mean, when you take a look and you look at the type of trade that they made today, bringing in a guy like Louis Eriksson, although it was a $6 million contract, I think it's only $3 million in actual cash that's owed to him. So that's, the type of deals that they're looking to make, ones that are that were front loaded, that are just going to rack up the cap, but they don't actually need to spend any money to actually do it. Looks like we do have that trade, and the details are now coming out. Carolina trading 27 to Nashville. Nashville coming up from 40, and they also trade pick 51. So 40 and 51 to move up to 27. What do you guys think Nashville could be after here? Could this potentially...
I hate that.
You hate that in terms of a value perspective?
Yeah, like 40 in this draft, when we see like Ratu and Chibrikov are still on the board and guys are getting pushed down, the guys you're getting at 40 and 51 are going to be real similar to the guy at 27.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. You are not wrong there. There's not much difference between 27 and 50, right? Like there's a lot of the same guys. Like this happens in every single draft. Do we have any potential, guesses as to
who they took last time? Ceulemans?
No, they didn't take.
Oh, they took what? I just watched Svechkov. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chibrikov.
I'm thinking Chibrikov, Pinelli. They could go Pinelli. I mean,
yep.
They could go defenseman like Danil Chayka's still out there, I guess.
Chayka's kind of fallen off way off. So I'd be surprised if it's Chayka. Scott Morrow, if they really want to swing for the fences on defense.
That's another Ferrari guy.
They're not going to take. Yeah, he played at Shattuck St. Mary's in high school, and he's just like the raw mold you out of like clay defenseman. They're set on defense, aren't they? Not set, but don't they have like a good defensive pipeline with Ferrance and Fabro? And I guess they just traded Ryan Ellis.
Yeah. Well, they brought in Philip Myers. Right. Brought in Myers. They can go a couple of different spots. I mean, Stankoven, I guess, is an option as well.
Yeah, Stankoven and Tolvanen on either wing would just be goal central. That'd be fun. Let's vote for that.
Maybe that's what could get Matt Duchene going. If he can just, dump the puck off to these guys and allow them to do what they got to do.
Do they listen to country music in Stankoven's from Kamloops? So yeah, for sure, they'll be friends.
There really needs to be a rule that if you trade up in the draft, you've got to just, as soon as the trade is announced, you have to make your pick.
They give them 5 more minutes.
They've made the pick. They've made the pick, and it is Zach Leroux.
Okay.
Interesting.
Back-to-back centers.
He's more of a winger. More of a winger. But Zach Leroux is more so interesting because, like, wasn't this the kid that you guys were saying has some...
he gets suspended.
Yeah, like there's some issues here. So that's a bit of a roll of the dice. You're giving up 2 valuable picks to go up and get a guy with red flags.
So Zach Leroux, 4 games for fighting after the original altercation, 2 games for unsportsmanlike, 3 games for high sticking because he was his 4th infraction, and 4 games for unsportsmanlike conduct and taking off helmet during a fight. He missed 13 games during his draft year.
That's a lot. I mean, especially in a year where you're not playing as many games. All those suspensions were this year?
Yeah. I'm not joking. God. Yeah. And think about it. The suspension for the high sticks, that was his 4th high stick, which means that he's sitting in the box 3 other games for high sticking penalties. It's a lot of high sticks.
Yeah. He's got good size, though. I mean, like, young kid, like almost 6 feet, almost 200 pounds, could play a powerful type game.
He's really talented. Like
Nashville's made their pick as well.
Good hands, right?
Nashville's made their pick as well. Zachary Leroux.
That's who we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about. Zach Leroux.
Where you been?
I was like, that's not what they said.
Yeah. He's actually skilled though. That's the thing is that I think similar to the way we talk about Tom Wilson, where if Tom Wilson could just play hockey, he'd be awesome.
Better.
Yeah.
I've heard some Max Domi comparisons, which I actually think is a decent comparison.
Because he just loses his mind once in a while.
Well, there's that, hard-headed, yes, but also like a guy who plays a bit of a heavier game, but he's got some skill, right? He's got some nice hands to him.
Yeah. Any of those guys that why is Sam Cosentino playing a guitar? Any of those guys that play on the edge and tip over it, I think is going to be a good comparison. Because how many times, though, do we see a guy that plays like a Tom Wilson or a Max Domi and then just settles down and doesn't do that? I feel like that's just a thing they do, right, for their whole career.
Yeah. I think Zach Leroux, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I gotta look it up.
Most guys that don't settle down, who play like that, don't make the league, right? Because if you're that unhinged, it's pretty rare that you're so good that teams will still risk having you in the lineup when you can, put them down a man for 5 minutes every other game. You're like, Tom Wilson is such an outlier for a reason. And part of that is that he doesn't learn from discipline. And another is that he's been trusted enough by an organization to continue playing.
Yeah, I guess you got to be a Vander Kane, right?
Yeah, pretty much, right? You got to be incredibly talented. And I do wonder, like, would we feel the same way about Tom Wilson if the Capitals didn't stick with him so solidly in like the top of their lineup for so long? Like, he's developed into a pretty good player, but for a long time when he started his career, he was pretty awful. Like he was just there to hurt people. And then, you just stick him with Ovechkin and Backstrom for like 3 seasons and eventually the talent seeps in.
Yeah. I guess if you make the investment, you got to invest, I guess don't pay attention to sunk cost fallacy. Just throw it out the window when you draft one of these guys.
Let's play a little game here, I guess, as we kind of sit here and wait a little bit for these picks to come in. But as the Colorado Avalanche are picking, their captain is actually, well, as of now, a free agent and looking to hit the market. Let's play a little free agent frenzy game. What's your favorite destination for Gabe Landeskog?
I still don't see him leaving Colorado, to be honest. I know that he's looking around, but he wants a big contract. I think it's just the wrong year to be looking for it. I could see him signing in Colorado for a short term, just because he's been the captain since he was 18 or 19 years old. And who really wants to leave the Colorado Avalanche right now?
Well,
is his heart really set on leaving the Colorado Avalanche?
If they pick Logan Stankoven, I'm going to lose it. I don't. That's fun. That's fun. He was a riser. If they had the cap space, Gabe Landeskog in New York for the New York Rangers would be a lot of fun.
I know. The Islanders are kind of my pick for Landeskog, like a sneaky little pick. They've been clearing out some cap space, right? Like moving out Leddy, allowing Everly to get taken in the draft, right? Fits their identity, a hard-nosed player, and they need somebody who can score. I like the Islanders as a sneaky little pick, and I feel like Lou Lamoriello would throw a boatload of cash at him to come to the island.
Yeah.
So LaRue also spit on someone, apparently.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the unsportsmanlike conduct suspension.
It might be.
I remember. So he was also at the Canada Games for Team Quebec. I do recall. I want to make sure. He's like, that name sounds familiar to me. I'm pretty sure I saw him play there, and I did. He was like a supremely talented player. He had 10 goals in the 6 games at that tournament, and looked like an absolute star in the making. So I'm not surprised to see him a couple of years later go in the first round. I kind of forgot about his name and forgot that he existed because I was, an Ontario boy when I was there. So I was kind of just like keeping an eye on what's going on with Ontario. But I do recall LaRue being like a stud for Quebec at the time and thinking this kid's good. They also have a goal. Their goalie, was it William Blackburn, who's currently in the queue. I think his draft year might be next season. But anyways. So LaRue actually, if I recall, decent player, pretty good player. But I feel like I remember him also being a hothead during that tournament, like losing his cool a couple of times in the tournament as a 16-year-old.
Yeah, I don't think you just become a hothead randomly one year. I think this is a lifelong achievement.
He has a great quote here to, I guess Mark Masters is reporting it from LaRue. He says, "I play on the edge. When the wires touch, sometimes you kind of cross the line." And then he says,
That's
I
awesome.
know I'm not done making mistakes. I'll probably make a lot more, but I learn from every single one of them.
This makes me like him more.
You're literally out there on your draft day being like, I'm going to get suspended a lot more. I'm not done hurting guys. And
so he's like Nazem Kadri in the playoffs. Just he's going to play on the line, take someone's head off, and hurt his team.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yep.
Many years in a row.
So Oscar Olesen ends up being the pick for the Colorado Avalanche. Somebody who I know Rachel Dory was really high on. Rachel Dory.
Yeah. Why does he have a San Jose? Why? Look at those hats. Who gave him those hats? Because he was not going to any of those teams.
Maybe they're moving up. Maybe. Let's talk about one other player who's going to be hitting the free agent market, Dougie Hamilton. Where do you think he lands? What's your favorite destination for Dougie?
Montreal.
I was going to say the same thing. I don't think it's going to happen, but they just got all that cap space freed up. They need a right-handed defenseman.
He's not slow enough to play on Montreal's defense. only Sherratt's and Merrills. Yeah, only Sherratt's from here on out.
Somebody just needs to call Mark Bergevin and be like, listen, he's really tall. He's really tall. Is he physical? He's tall. He's a big guy. Just sign him.
They should.
They should. They need. He would fix what a lot of what ails them. Like Eric Gustafsson is just not the answer to your power play. I don't care.
Well, and
Absolutely
can you imagine the breath of fresh air that would be for Jeff Petrie not to have all that pressure on him all the time to move the puck? Like, man, give him some insulation.
Romanov can learn from him and learn how to be a defenseman in the Dougie Hamilton mold. Like that's Romanov's not going to learn from Brett Kulak or Ben Sherratt about how to play defense. Like it's not. It makes too much sense. That's why it's not going to happen. They're going to sign like
David Savard. It's going to be David Savard. 100% it'll be David Savard. Defensive defenseman. That's what they love.
I just don't get it.
They made the Stanley Cup final. Clearly, they did something right?
I just honestly, if you're going to sign David Savard, just put Matthias Norlinder on the team and just let him do stuff. That would be more fun.
That is one interesting thing. Is Norlinder ready to come over? I mean, that would be.
He's playing for Laval next year, isn't he?
I think that's the plan. Yeah.
That's I don't know. I'm just tired of seeing that. Like Montreal's defense fell apart at the end. Like it was just it could not hang. And
no, I mean it started to fall apart in the end of the series versus Vegas. It's just that Price stood on his head, and then against Tampa, it was just. Like Vegas was very complacent in shooting from the perimeter, right? Like they were let their defensemen carry the day offensively.
Did they just pick Chase Stillman?
Yep.
Tom Fitzgerald should not be allowed to pick picks in the end of the first round.
Yeah. What was that? Mokhtadulin?
Shakir Mokhmamuddin.
Yeah, sure. Whatever that name was that came out of your mouth that I butchered brutally.
Chase Stillman is the son of Corey Stillman, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
This is like the draft of sons of former players.
They
all are, but
do you guys want the elite prospect rankings of Chase Stillman's as I run this down?
Well, yes. I know he's 42 on Bob McKenzie's list. So what is he on?
On the other ones, we've got 41 at Elite Prospect, 62, 51, 74, 35 for Central Scouting North America, 70, 96 at Dauber, 41, 99 for Smart Scouting.
Wow. Is this officially the reach of the first round, or would you still
Tyler Boucher
have Tyler Boucher?
10 is just such a different animal, right?
You're right. Yeah. But that's oh man, that's
number 2.
Oof.
There's
so much good talent left on the board. That's what's so like. You still got like Aturatu available. You've got Pinelli still out there. Nikita Chibrikov. Like if they wanted a winger, what's wrong with Chibrikov?
Yeah, I gotta wonder if the Canadians are looking at Ratu because they love their Finns, right?
That'd be a great pickup for them. Yeah,
and he's a center that you can throw on the wing. Not that they need centers after Suzuki and KK, but
they do though. Losing Danault, right?
Right.
Yeah. I guess you. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. You go ahead.
I was gonna say Jake Evans probably isn't your long-term answer at center. So.
Yeah. No. Well, along the lines of the game that we've been playing, I guess we can move on to Phil Danault as our favorite free agent destination for him.
Seattle. I think that you look at the players that Seattle has taken, and they're going all in on defense.
Yeah.
It makes total sense for him to go in and be their second line center.
I understand it from a perspective of like he fits what they're trying to do, and like he looks like he fits in with the Kraken. But is he going to want to go there? Like he just came off a Stanley Cup run where he probably wants to win a cup. Right.
Yeah, but I think he will go where the money is because this is his big chance to make bank, right?
I think there'll be money elsewhere though. Like
what if what if Colorado loses Landeskog and says Philip Danault?
Oh, well, then he'll go to Colorado. I mean, you're not going to balk at Colorado.
That would be a choice because he's what does Danault want to make? $6 million?
Yeah, it looks like 6. He is looking for 6. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay him 6. I think at 5, I'd be very comfortable.
Yeah, I think at 5, but even him, like, he's not really. He's just a shutdown center.
Well, this is the thing about
what else
Danault is he's a little bit underrated offensively
because comes back from 3-1
of this year, right? Like this year, he really could not put the puck in the net. Something went wrong with his game. He got the yips offensively. But you look at the 3 years prior, and at even strength, his numbers are very strong. Not necessarily in goal scoring, but he's a very good playmaker. He creates a lot of good plays for his wingers. But he's a power play dead puck. Like he can't focus on the power play. He's never been able to compete there. So his numbers overall don't look very strong, but at 5-on-5, he's a really solid offensive player, and he'll probably get that back next year. So I think he's probably a little bit undervalued in that respect. And defensively, man, he just is unbelievable. Like, ask Austin Matthews.
Yep. Well aware.
Or Mark Stone, if you want.
Oh yeah, Mark Stone. Man, have you ever seen Mark Stone so frustrated in your life?
No.
Yeah, when he hit the post for the World Juniors to win the game against Russia.
Speaking of Mark Stone, the Vegas Golden Knights pick is in.
They need this desperately to be good because they have no pipeline left.
No, I mean Brandon Brisson, I like, who they took last year in the first round. He's a pretty good young
Krebs, and that's it because they just traded Cody Glass. So
yeah, well, I was looking at their like prospects also. Like Jack Dugan is considered one of their top prospects. I'm like, this guy's like 23 and has done nothing in his career. I don't know why I would consider him a top prospect, but
Eric Engels is hinting that
Zach Dean.
Okay, Zach Dean. Eric Engels is also hinting that the Canadiens might be making a trade.
Zach Dean is perfectly cromulent for 29 or 30.
Yeah, he was expected to go in the 30s somewhere, probably.
Yeah. That's probably. By the way, Seth Jones has a full no move clause. By the way, on his deal.
Wow, that is awful.
I mean, if you're giving someone 8 years, $9.5 million, like you're probably going to give them a full.
That's already the full.
It's also 3. Most of the years have a $5 million signing bonus as well.
What's it like at the end of the deal?
A $5 million. Okay, so it goes 7.5 plus 5 sign, 7.5, 5, 5.5, and then 5 sign, then $7 million in contract, $1 million sign, then 2.5 and 5 for the last 3 years.
Interesting. 2 picks left. No, this is the last pick. No, 2 picks.
There's 2 picks.
Right. Because there's 32 teams now.
Zach Dean, he's also from the Q. He was ranked like in the 30s or the late 20s. He's fast and can pass and skill and stuff like that. Like that's kind of his game. So it makes sense for Vegas.
Let's play a quick video here. This is a Locked On Now from earlier today. Ian McLaren from Locked On Bruins on the contract that was signed by Taylor Hall, 4 years at $6 million.
What's up, everybody? It's Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, here to let you know that Taylor Hall has officially re-signed with the Boston Bruins at $6 million over the next 4 seasons. He will be the 4th highest paid player on the team for the time being, at least. Cough Charlie McAvoy next summer, behind Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, and Brad Marchand. Of course, Hall was acquired before the trade deadline along with Curtis Lazar for a 2nd-round pick that will be cashed in this weekend by the Sabres, as well as Anders Bjork, and he fit in amazingly alongside David Krejci, who we still hope will be back next season, as well as Craig Smith. So Taylor Hall, the strong 200-foot game, back in black and gold for at least the next 4 seasons. He'll be paid $24 million over the course of that deal. Keep it locked to Locked On Boston Bruins for all the latest on the black and gold. Please do subscribe. And check out the Locked On NHL Draft Show that's happening tonight, Friday, beginning at 8 p.m.
Thanks for the plug, Ian.
Yeah, it's live now. No, it's clutch that we had those Locked On Nows to be able to run today. Definitely, it's nice to allow the local hosts give a local perspective. And we're talking about these crazy albatross type contracts that some of these players are looking to get. 4 years, $6 million for Taylor Hall, I thought was actually a great deal for both sides.
Yeah, it's like clearly Hall is now wanting some steady time, right? He wants to be on a team that is competitive, and he doesn't want to be the guy that everyone relies on all the time. And he seemed to mesh pretty well with Boston.
I thought that when I thought that it was going to be a really good marriage, and then it turned out to be, and I'm really glad because he's put up with a lot over the course of his career, and he's moved around a couple times, had that one really good season in New Jersey, but outside of that, I mean, he's just been on last place teams. They've been winning draft lotteries.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of buzz for the Canadians possibly taking Stankoven.
Yes, the tiny people on the wings. He's shorter than Cole Caulfield.
Wow, that would be
that
insane.
exists.
Logan Stankoven he's from Kamloops, actually. He is nasty. He's just really short. He is listed at 5'8". No chance.
No.
No chance he's 5'8". Wait till you see if they pick him. Wait till you see a highlight pack. He looks small, but he is nasty. Super, super, super skilled.
So we're going on. So the trade did not materialize, I'm assuming. Was it Arpon Basso who said there was a trade?
Eric Engels was saying that there was a potential trade happening.
So I'm guessing that just didn't materialize here.
Yeah.
If they end up making the pick.
Worked.
Interesting. Favorite destination for Blake Coleman?
Whoever it is winning the cup.
No, that's Pat Maroon.
Oh, that's Pat Maroon. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, Blake Coleman's got two.
Who's still in Tampa. How much would Coleman cost?
You got to think he's making at least 5, right? Coming off 2 cups.
Wow. I mean, logically,
whoever gives him a contract is probably going to be like, damn, we just got David Clarkson.
Well, look at Barclay Goodrow secure in the bag. Blake Coleman's probably getting more.
He'll get more than that. Absolutely.
That's what I mean. Like, if Barclay Goodrow's getting 3.6 or whatever for 6 years with a no move clause, Blake Coleman is licking his chops, right?
Oh yeah, like he's gonna get a ridiculous contract from someone.
I mean, if I'm the Leafs, if you can get him at 4.5, which I don't think is possible, but if you can, I mean, I think you do it.
Yeah, you know who could really use him is the Edmonton Oilers.
Whoa,
they're getting him over Zach Hyman.
Logan Mailloux is the
pick?
They
took Logan Mailloux. Oh
Logan Mailloux is the pick for the Montreal Canadiens.
That's bad.
Interesting. So Logan Mailloux this week.
For a team that talks about character.
Yeah, I'll let you go with this. You're a Montreal guy. Yeah, you're a Montreal guy. You go ahead. Now you say they talk about character. Were they not like this close to pulling off a trade to bring in Tony DeAngelo last year?
Yes, and they were also interested in Slava Voinov when he was eligible or possibly eligible to come back. So like this is
very on brand. So for those listening to the stream who aren't exactly familiar with the Logan Mailloux situation, he actually told teams not to draft him. He did not want to be drafted after about a week ago. There were allegations against him that he had distributed some photos that he took of a girl that was performing some sexual acts, and I guess she wasn't aware that the photos were taken, and then they got distributed, and she also was not aware that was happening, and it got messy and ugly, and I didn't think that he was going to get drafted at all, and that he was going to be off everyone's board, and the fact that he's going in the first round here to Montreal, I don't know, man.
This is a how do you head into the offseason with this kind of move? Like, I just don't understand the thinking here.
Me either. This is like, I'm almost speechless, to be honest. The fact that they actually made this pick and made it in the first round. Like, there's no way that this guy was getting taken. And you don't make that. Like, there's a bundle of players that they could have went with that actually would have been great picks. And they go with the most controversial player that they possibly could have gone, who's not even the best player available in my estimation either. No. Like I spoke with a former OHL coach, and he was saying to me that Logan Mailloux may not even be an NHLer. Like at the end of the day, he doesn't even think that he can. Like he may be a fringe guy, but he doesn't see him as a legitimate NHLer. And for them to spend a first-round pick on him, I'm stunned. And the Montreal has had some really good drafts of late.
Yep. He was charged criminally. It's not like these are just rumors or like he said, she said. There was like actual Swedish police charges. So like that's not good.
Just wait until they sign D'Angelo in a couple days here.
Like then that's now going to be. It's already a joke on Twitter. Like, oh, we already know where D'Angelo's going, so we're playing this free agent game through it the last little bit. Like, oh,
I mean, he's going to be in Montreal now, right? I think that's what we all expect. I think the main, like, the craziest thing about this is that they're willing to do this while at the same time Marc Bergevin is being questioned about his involvement and knowledge of what's gone on in Chicago.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, you are already under the microscope here. You've denied all knowledge. You've had a history of being interested in people who have had off-ice, like major off-ice issues. They hired Sean Burke this year as their goalie coach. Sean Burke was charged with beating his wife. Rob Ramage has worked for them. I believe he had a vehicular manslaughter situation. So they have a long history under Marc Bergevin of taking people who have very questionable off-ice issues. And this is just not great.
It's not even like they're trying to work around it. Like Logan Mailloux said, don't draft me. Like as a last-ditch effort to recover his image, I guess.
Yeah, rehabilitate him.
Rehabilitate, thank you. Yeah.
Because now he gets picked here. Like, this is what we're all talking about tomorrow. And everyone's bringing up his whole story. Whereas if he says, don't pick me, and he doesn't get picked, and the story kind of goes away. Not that it's right, but I mean, that's his thought process and why I'm assuming he asked not to get drafted. And here we are.
I just don't know.
Pick is about to come in, and
what's the Bergevin press conference tonight or tomorrow? Like what is that? Like how? I just don't understand.
I mean, we talked about the worst pick of the first round. I think it's this now.
It's this, and it sucks that they had to do this because it's not even like it's a hockey thing where we can laugh at Ottawa and be like, "Wow, you took Tyler Boucher. You guys went unplugged controller." This is like actual real life stuff that's bad.
Yeah,
like very bad.
This isn't even like it's like, oh, there's some off ice, like he's got, or some on ice red flags, you know, kind of like we talked about Zach LaRue. This is like criminally, right? This is a really, really weird pick.
There's good players available. They could have just taken Scott Morrow, who is lazy. That's his red flag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or Stanislav Svozil, who was another defense or Danil Chayka, like he's there too. Like I just don't understand what the thinking is to take a guy who renounced himself from the draft.
And Nolan Allen is the final pick of the first round by the Chicago.
Never heard of this person.
Blackhawks. He was the 83rd ranked prospect here by Sam Cosentino. On this
Nolan Allen?
Nolan Allen. Let's see where he ranked in
I'd just like to know where he played.
Nolan Allen did he actually not even make the board here?
He played for Prince Albert? Oh no, he's like I don't understand what he is.
He's not in the top 100 for at the Athletic.
Bob has him at 59.
Okay. Well, late second round pick, they take with the first round pick, and this is one of the picks that they got from
this is
Columbus
the swap
in the Seth Jones deal.
It's the swap. So they moved from 12 to 32, which you could have moved farther back.
Yeah.
What?
Okay. Yeah,
I'm honestly, I'm still floored by that pick.
Yeah, Logan Mailloux.
Yeah, like I thought maybe if any team was going to do something with Logan Mailloux, I expected it to be like a 5th round flyer. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Try to be like the team that outsmarted people and take a talented kid late in the round, even if he didn't want to be drafted. But a 1st round pick,
Bergevin's going to have to stand up there and be like, we believe in his rehabilitation path, which doesn't seem at all plausible or believable from what everybody else says.
Like, this whole pulling himself out of this draft was so clearly a strategy after he was completely unapologetic every time this was brought up until that moment. So this is not a kid who's proven that he's ready to be in this league and absolutely does not deserve to be.
No, this is definitely does not look good for the organization. And I think you brought up a really good point about how he's already under fire about the whole Blackhawks investigation. And then he goes ahead and selects a kid who very publicly at this point has an investigation and an allegation and charges actually, on him. And he looks past it, turns the other way, and still makes the pick. Is this a fireable offense if you are Montreal? Like, do you look into this now? And like, does he have to go to ownership and say, hey, we're going to make this pick? Or
I don't think there's any way he does it without.
He seems to have absolute autonomy though in Montreal, right?
Yeah, but I don't think there's any way that he can make that pick without going to ownership first. There's no way. I mean, if they did, then it could be a fireable offense, because I just don't understand how you do that. You're at the end of the draft. You know that the focus is going to be on you right after. This is going to be the most memorable thing about this 1st round going into tomorrow. Like, I just don't get it. I don't get how you can do this and sit there and, like, I guess it takes the focus off of Shea Weber.
Yeah, like Marc-Antoine Gaudin just said that Bergevin has always spoken of the character of his players as a cardinal value.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. What a sour note to end this whole draft on.
Sharks had Eklund at 2 on their board. I just don't know what to say. Like, how do you bring this back around to something positive?
It's hard to. Like, man, that is a rough way to end it.
I just don't know why they did it. Like, he said, don't draft me, which, like, I mean, does he not want to sign? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Like, are they just going to renounce the pick? Like, is it going to be Mitchell Miller where they just renounce him and he becomes a free agent? They just wasted 31 overall?
Absolutely. That could certainly
could create that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that absolutely could end up happening.
That makes it from a not that I want to do like from the hockey perspective, but like from a hockey team building perspective, that makes it even worse.
Oh, awful asset management.
And that's not even like, I don't even care about the asset at this point. I just care about the fact that they drafted him in general.
Yes. Yeah. It's what an absolute, let's say if I was a GM, I would say, yeah, I'm with you, Shelby. I also would not have hired that or drafted Logan Mailloux. I'm with you on that one, Shelby. Okay, let's try and I guess wrap this up a little bit here. Steal of the draft. I'm still going to go with Eklund.
Yeah,
as my steal of the draft.
Eklund or Wallstedt?
Yeah, Wallstedt at 20 was a pretty solid pickup. I still don't know how Edmonton decided to trade down and not take that goaltender anyways. Boucher, Stillman, 2 reaches, I felt. And then
Nolan
Allen also, yeah. Another one who just isn't even on many radars at all. And then Logan Mailloux, maybe the worst draft pick of all time.
Apparently the Canadiens' Twitter account has still not announced the pick.
Did Bergevin just go rogue?
Like, that's what I'm wondering. Did he go rogue? Like, how, if you are like Jeff Molson, how do you say, yep, that's fine, that's going to go over well with our fan base? Especially if, like, this kid wasn't even considered a top talent. Like, it's not like this was best player on the board where this was a top 5 guy who fell all the way. Like, he's not even a guaranteed to be a good player. There are many guys in the same realm as this that are just as good, if not maybe even a little bit better, that they could have taken and not had egg on their face. None of this makes sense. I don't understand.
If you're on the scout team, do you just quit?
I mean,
like
you put in all of that work and then they go and they make this pick after years of hard work.
I mean, it looks like it wasn't just Bergevin. Grant McKegg, who historically knows a lot about what goes on in the Canadian scouting staff because he's friends with Trevor Timmins, but is also a terrible evaluator in himself, said that whenever he talked about Mailloux with Timmins defended him all year. So interesting that it's not just on Bergevin, but at the same time, what on earth, guys?
Yeah, there is also a little bit more news coming out right now. Quickly, I guess we can get to, but it looks like Sam Reinhart on his way to Florida per Elliot Friedman. So they're working hard on a Reinhart deal, which means it's basically all but done. And he's working hard to figure out what the return is basically what that means. So that's interesting. Reinhart to Florida. Adding to really good pickup.
Does it have the return?
Not yet. I'm trying to see if it comes through, but doesn't look like it is yet, at least.
Because it depends. Like if they traded nothing, like if they traded Owen Tippett for him, who cares, right?
I doubt it. I mean, there's no. They keep saying pick and a prospect. So what is like a second rounder and a prospect maybe, or their first next year? The fact that this comes down after the draft is over leads me to believe that either A, it's a second rounder that's involved, or it's a pick in next year's draft.
So Mark Bergevin in his press conference just said they by no means minimizes his actions, and they'll be working along with Mailloux on his journey, and we'll work with him along the path. That's brutal.
They also said that they not only selected a promising young player, but a young man who is admitted to making a serious mistake. Screw off.
Yeah, apparently another quote here from him. His recent public statement is a genuine acknowledgement of his poor behavior and a first step on his journey.
No, it's not. That was just a sick PR play.
Yeah, that was 100% his agent wrote that up. There's been no hint of being sorry about this so far. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Canadians. The Canadians just put out a Déclaration des Canadiens sur les élections. It's in French though. I can't read that.
They'll put out an English one soon.
Yeah, they put it out 16 seconds ago. I just don't like they had. Look at this. I'm going to turn this around. Look at how long this statement is. They had this ready. Like that's a long statement. That's a long statement.
Yeah, that's.
Can I see the English, please?
Which obviously means that this was not him going rogue, and he must have had the backing of the organization to make this pick. And if that's the case, that puts into question a lot of things. Right?
I mean, the entire philosophy of the organization. And it's been a long time that I think it's been obvious.
If you're like Carey Price, how does this make you feel? Like the players in the locker room that, you know what I mean? Like, is there a rift now here? And you got to think that they have an opinion on this.
Well, yeah, I mean,
the last statement of this thing, the last sentence of this statement is, we are also committed to raising awareness among our players about the repercussions of their actions on the lives of others.
Yes, the repercussions of being drafted in the first round.
No,
get out of here.
Something like this. I just like hard jerk off motion. Well, that's probably not the right thing to do, but like, come on, this is a brutal statement.
Like, talk about like this is the fastest I've ever seen a team just ruin goodwill of like a crazy cup run that was unexpected. Like literally everyone in the fan base was super pleased. No one expected them to get so far. This is going to cause issues.
Absolutely.
If you have to put out a statement immediately after picking a player, you probably shouldn't pick the player, right?
Especially in the first round. Like there's so many good options. It's not like they had a situation where there was no talent left and they're like, oh, this kid has issues, but he's a mega talent who's way above the field. Man.
That's what I mean. Like this isn't like it was Ryan Merkley where there was massive red flags, right? Where there was some massive like off ice character concerns there. But he has, a lot of talent, but it wasn't nearly to the magnitude of this. And he ends up getting picked. This is not the same thing. Like he should not have been picked, and he wasn't nearly the talent either. None of it makes sense.
No, Ryan Merkley was mad and smashing sticks and telling coaches to F off and stuff like that, not committing crimes.
He's a poor sport. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a big difference between taking a guy like that and taking this. This is just...
That's what I mean. Like that's what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I think my brain is just melting down over the fact that he's actually chosen.
Let's talk about some of the good picks, like just quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. And let's try to move past this ridiculousness. So I think we all think Columbus did really well today. San Jose as well with getting Eklund.
The Wild.
Yeah, the Wild did really well.
Yeah.
It was a pretty interesting draft all over the place. I think the second round might be more interesting. It'll certainly be faster.
Well, there's Stankoven, Ratu, Chibrikov, Pinelli. Simone Robertson is a guy that people really like. Like there's some decent Scott Morrow, Svozil, Martino. Like these guys are worth taking a swing on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of really talented players that are still going to be out there for day two. Olin Zellweger is somebody who, I think has been rising a little bit of an undersized defenseman, but I think this is a pick that I've somewhat circled as a Leafs type guy. So if he can fall to like 58, which is unlikely, not bad. We talked about Ayrton Martino and how, we're big fans of him, and Tony's a big fan of him. So lots of stuff going on. But it looks like this Reinhart to the Panthers is pretty well done here. Still waiting on the return though. Any other final thoughts, I guess, on the draft? I think Detroit sneakily did pretty good. They picked up Edmondson, I think is a really good defenseman to pair up. Casa over Wallstat was an interesting selection.
It's a choice. Time to trade up. Yeah, it's definitely a choice. See, this is the thing. Yzerman's choices have all not burnt him, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like you can trust the process in a way, right?
The Teflon Don in New York and Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. So
Detroit's going to get another good player because they pick at like 38 or something like that.
Yeah, they'll pick early tomorrow, right?
Yeah, Detroit. I think it was harder to not do well in this draft because of the chaos. Like, I think, honestly, Anaheim didn't do great considering the talent that was there at 3, but it's hard to fault them when everybody's kind of jammed up 3 to 9, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was all... We knew that it was going to be kind of a big old cluster at that point. So, anything else? Let's see. I really like the Coronado pick to Calgary. That was a nice little pickup. I mean, Buffalo adding Isaac Rosen and obviously Owen Power at the top of the draft. Really nice adds there. Looks like they're going to get something now in return for Sam Reinhart, which...
Do they also have 33?
Depth. They've got the pick tomorrow. Where they should be able to get another guy. Maybe, we could see Atu Ratti or Chabrikov or, another one of these solid players go off the board early on in the second round. Pinelli is still out there, which is really surprising to me, actually. I thought he was a first rounder all day long.
Yeah. A couple of surprise names still available in the second round, which makes tomorrow more exciting. But yeah, what an awful end to the draft.
I know.
I guess we should probably wrap it up because I know I need to get to sleep. And Man.
We've been going for over 4 hours, you and I, Burke, and
congratulations to you guys.
In the words of Giannis Antetokounmpo, I got a tinkle.
All right. So that's all we have for you. Thanks for coming with us, Kyle. You were there for a lot of it. That's all we have for you today on the Locked On NHL Draft live show special. Thanks so much for being here with us. We enjoyed doing this for you all, and can't wait for the next live show.